Here.
Ms. McKnight?
Here.
Mr. Pell?
Here.
Mr. Wenstrup?
Here.
Welcome to all of you in the audience, and those of you that may be watching via Zoom, we welcome you as well. We originally had 3 items on our agenda. One of the items has been removed. Item 5, Site 20-14 Hacker Warehouse Site Plan Review at 791 US 50. We will not be considering that case this evening. Our, not rules of order, but our order of business, that's what I want to say. For each of our cases, we will ask Pam Holbrook, our staff, to present the case. There will be an opportunity for Planning Commission members to ask questions of Pam. We will then give the applicant an opportunity to present their case. Planning Commission members will then be able to ask questions of the applicant. Once the applicant has completed, we will open the floor to first those of you that are in the room, and then when we've heard from everyone in the room, we'll open the floor to those that are watching on Zoom. When it's your opportunity to speak, we ask that you come to the microphone, state your name and address, and make any comments or questions you have regarding the application. Some of you may find that other speakers have already stated something that you were going to say. We're happy to have you come to the podium and just reiterate that you agree with what's been said. We want to get all the information that we can in order to make the best decision possible this evening. So have I gotten anything? We good?
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. So our first case this evening is Milford South Phase 2, a zone change request from R2 Single Family Residential to R4 Multifamily Residential District with a planned development overlay.
All right, thank you. The location is 777 Garfield Avenue. The property owner is Milford Schools. The applicant is Commercial Development Services Group, Paul Shermer, 1009 Delta Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. The acreage is 6.4 acres of a 13.59 acre parcel. Tax parcel ID is 210-729.026P. Existing zoning is R2 Single Family Residential District, and the proposed zoning is R4 Multifamily Residential District with a planned development overlay. The adjacent land use to the north is R3 Single Family Residential. To the east is R3 Single Family Residential District, and to the west is R3 Single Family Residential, and to the south is Valley View, and that's zoned R2. Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to review a zone change and plan development application submitted by CDSG. Per section 1133.02 of the Milford zoning ordinance, CDSG is requesting a zone change from R2 single family to R4 multifamily residential district with a planned development overlay to a portion of parcel number 210-729.026P. The applicant is proposing to convert the school building to 6 townhouse units and construct 14 duplex units on the 6.49 acres. The process following the public hearing, the Planning Commission may recommend the application be granted as requested, may recommend a modification of the zoning change requested, or they may recommend the application not be granted. After receiving the Planning Commission recommendation, the City Council will hold a public hearing. The council public hearing is scheduled for August 18th at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers. Following the public hearing and after reviewing the recommendation of the Planning Commission, council shall vote on the proposed zone change. Council may overrule the Planning Commission recommendation by a 2/3 vote of the full membership of council. If the council approves the zone change in the plan development request, the applicant will be required to submit a final development plan to Planning Commission for review and approval. The final development plan will include items such as final grading plan, site plans, elevation, floor plans, and a detailed landscaping plan. The applicant has 1 year to begin construction once a final development plan is approved. Otherwise, the plan becomes void. The backgrounds follows. City Council approved Ordinance 18-13-6 or 18-13 1368 on May 15th, 2018, rezoning the Milford South property from institutional zoning to R2 single-family residential zoning. City Council initiated the request for the zone change to ensure that the future development includes a residential use rather than leave the parcel open for development as an institutional land use. On November 13th, 2019, Planning Commission approved a preliminary subdivision plat submitted by CDSG to permit the construction of 20 single-family lots on a portion of the 13.59 acre lot. The preliminary subdivision plat is referred to as Milford South Phase 1 or Phase 1 in this staff report. The preliminary subdivision plat process is regulated by Chapter 1105 in the subdivision regulations and requires approval by the Planning Commission. The applicant is required to submit a final plat to Planning Commission for approval, which shall reflect all changes as outlined in the approval letter dated November 15th, 2019. Construction of the Phase 1 plan may not begin until a final plat is recorded at the Claremont County Auditor's Office. The comprehensive plan, updated in 2017, provides a long-term view for planning the future of the community. Page 3 of the plan states it is important for citizens to realize that while the plan is important, it is not a strict regulating document. Rather, it is a policy document used by city staff, Planning Commission, and City Council to guide decisions about such issues as rezoning proposals. The existing zoning analysis shows that a large portion of the property in Milford is zoned institutional and R2 single-family residential district, amounting to about 45% of the existing districts. Existing land use includes 20% single-family, 1% two-family, less than 1% as three-family, and 8% multifamily residential. Page 13 of the comprehensive plan describes several types of residential future land uses. And I'm not going to read those. Those are, they describe the single-family residential, cluster housing, traditional residential, and multifamily residential. The plan identifies several strategies that can be utilized by the city for future development. These strategies include adaptive reuse and low-impact development. Adaptive reuse is the repurposing of existing buildings into sustainable new uses and modern functions. Low-impact development helps to minimize the amount of untreated stormwater runoff leaving the site. The plan states innovative planning can result in a site yielding the same number of houses or buildings, but with significantly less impervious area. The comprehensive plan serves as a long-term guide for the community. It helps city leaders make decisions about the location, scale, and quality of new development. The plan represents the vision as defined by the steering committee in 2017. Steering committee's vision for the Milford South property was as a residential use. The committee's vision is supported by the council's zone change to the Milford South property to R2 in 2018. The subject site is currently zoned R2 single-family residential. The applicant indicates he would be permitted to construct up to 28 single-family homes in the R2 district. The staff has not seen a plan showing single-family homes on Phase 2 and notes that Phase 2 does not include a public right-of-way, but includes several detention systems. The applicant is seeking a zone change to the R4 multifamily. And the purpose of the R4 multifamily residential district is to provide for small-scale attached housing that includes townhomes, condominiums, and other multifamily dwellings that are not part of a larger complex. Small-scale multifamily dwellings and duplex units are permitted uses in the R4 zoning district. The addition of a planned development overlay allows the city to control the quality of the development while enabling flexibility in the zoning standards. Staff's initial discussions considered the need to incorporate an R4 and R5 zoning district, and that is why the R5 zoning district is referenced on their site plan and narrative. However, after further review, staff recommends that the zone change be limited to R4 multifamily residential district with the planned development overlay, which ensures a small-scale development. Staff recommends the site plan and narrative be adjusted for the city council submittal. A significant concern for the city is the ratio of owner-occupied homes versus rentals. The 2018 American Community Survey prepared by the U.S. Census Bureau estimates 3,177 total households in Milford. 51.4% are owner-occupied and 48.6% are renter-occupied. This ratio is higher in Milford than in surrounding communities. It's been a goal of city leaders to encourage homeownership when reviewing future developments. Homeownership is an investment in the community and helps create stable neighborhoods. The plan development analysis includes the regulations in section 1169.03 of the Milford zoning ordinance control the residential plan development. Permitted uses, the applicant is proposing 7 two-family dwelling units and 6 townhouse units, and both unit types are permitted in the R4 district. The zoning ordinance defines multifamily dwellings as a dwelling designed for or occupied by 3 or more families with separate housekeeping and cooking facilities for each. 114902C states that multifamily dwellings with no more than 4 units are permitted in the R4 district. The ordinance does not clarify whether the 4 units are to be interpreted as 4 units per acre. Staff feels the 6 townhouses are considered attached single-family homes and comply with the spirit and intent of the ordinance. The project area is used to determine the permitted number of units. It includes the area used to serve the residential use, excluding floodway and right-of-way. Phase 2 is 6.438 acres and includes all land areas. Note the private drive is not considered right-of-way. It would not be maintained by city services. The density is determined by dividing the project area by the required lot area. If the zoning were to remain as an R2 zoning district, the required lot area is 10,000 square feet. The following table shows the different dwelling unit breakdown in relation to each zoning district. In the R2 district, the units allowed, if all the area could be developed, would be 28. In the R4 duplexes, that maximum units allowed would be 17, and the units they are considering are 14. And in the R4, for a multifamily, the units allowed would be 5, and the units they're providing are 6. The council's intent when rezoning this parcel was to make the land use residential rather than leave zoning as institutional. Staff agrees with the analysis provided by the applicant and believes this development is consistent with the goals and objectives of Milford's land use plan. The applicant provides a unified treatment of the development, and the design will preserve streams, wood cover, and terrain. The proposed development should help alleviate some of the stormwater issues that exist for the surrounding neighborhood by providing a coordinated plan to manage the water runoff. All the city departments have reviewed the plan. The city can provide water, sewer, and safety services to the property. Access to the development is provided by a private drive and turnarounds. City maintenance will not be provided to a private driveway. The fire department recommends that the private drive width be consistent to the end of the drive. The applicant appears to meet the minimum building height of 35 feet as specified in the R4 district. The townhouses are 22 feet 6 inches in height, and the duplexes are 23 feet 2 inches from grade to roof ridge. All building spacing conforms with the R4 zoning requirements. The applicant meets the rear setback requirements of 25 feet as specified in the R4 zoning district. Common open space should comprise up to 20% of the project area. The applicant has provided approximately 64% of the phase 2 site as open space. The total site 6.438 acres, and the applicant indicates that 4.115 acres is open space. The common open space will be used to manage the stormwater, includes landscape mounds and detention basins. The city does not wish to assume responsibility for the maintenance of these structures. Staff recommends that the maintenance plan be submitted showing the restrictions governing the use, improvement, and maintenance of the common open space and authorize the city to enforce the provisions. The screening will be a combination of existing vegetation, landscape mounds, and landscaping. The traffic impact study. Do you have that? Can I see your report? The staff report. This is my last page. As required in the application for the preliminary development plan, the applicant has provided a traffic impact study which indicates that the phase 2 development will result in 10.4 vehicle trips during peak hours. The applicant provided a revised traffic study which includes the 20 single-family homes in phase 1. Total vehicle trips for phase 1 and 2 would yield 30 vehicle trips at peak hours. I reached out to Jeff Johnson, the Director of Business Operation for the school district, to provide some context about the traffic when the site was a school. It's easy to forget the site was once a busy school utilizing Garfield Avenue. Mr. Johnson stated that the site was a school from the 1950s to 2004. The school served kindergarten to 4th grade. However, at one time, there was also 5th and 6th graders attending class there. At its peak, approximately 400 children were attending classes in the building with 6 buses transporting kids back and forth. Including staff, there would have been about 30 cars daily, not counting the parents that would have dropped off and picked up their children. As an elementary school, the site would have generated 35.09 trips at peak hours. This analysis appears in the revised traffic study. The 35.09 peak trips as a school are higher than the 30 trips made by the Phase 1 and Phase 2 proposed development. Due to topography and stormwater issues, the Milford South property is challenging to redevelop. The cluster type of development versus the single-family home lots would ensure that more of the site is preserved as open space and allow better management of water runoff. The city has a limited number of high-end duplexes and townhomes. Owner-occupied duplexes and townhomes can meet the spirit and intent of the council's desire to maintain this site as a residential neighborhood. The applicant is asking for approval of a total of 20 residential units on Phase 2. If the council approves this request, the applicant will not be able to increase the number of units without going back to City Council for approval. If the developer sold the property, a new developer would have to comply with the approved plan development or go through another approval process. Based on the information available to date, staff is in support of the applicant's request to rezone Milford South property to R4 with a plan development overlay with the following conditions. Provide a stormwater maintenance plan before approval of a final plat. The private drive width will be the same width to the end of the drive. Provide details about the types of materials to be used, and provide some market data supporting the need for duplexes in the city. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Pam. Any questions from Planning Commission?
But you said the fire department did say it's okay. I was just noticing that kind of like dead ends. There doesn't need to be a turnaround because it's a private drive.
There actually is a turnaround if you look in between.
Like the backup spot.
In between condo or duplex D11 and D10.
Okay.
There's
That would be like the back end turnaround. Okay. The fire department was okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, if there are no other questions for staff, we'll ask the applicant to come to the podium and present their application.
There it is. All right. Hello, everybody again. I think everybody knows my name, Paul Shermer. Been here for Phase 1 a couple of times for neighborhood meetings and the like. I'm joined here with some other folks on my team. I've got Stan Meserly of Mesco Engineering. He's the site civil on the project. And I've got Mike Toensmeyer with us also, who is a structural engineer that we've used on another retail project that's not too far away from here, who has assisted in the evaluation of the school building and helped verify that the adaptive reuse such is feasible. So let's see. First of all, I'm going to see if my mouse works from this distance, which I think it does. There we go. So from the initial approval, I think everybody knows where the site is. So the 13-acre site is about approximately 1,800 feet off Main Street along Garfield Road, just east of downtown, which makes it an absolute great walkable community. We've had a lot of interest, not only in builders, but we've also got several future potential residents tracking me down, just inquiring about when lots and home sites will be available. So this distance right here is a very attractive feature. Next slide here is the subject property itself. As Pam mentioned, we've got 13.5 acres. As stated during a previous meeting, I kind of identified 3 different areas with as we looked at the original site. We've got and these red lines are topography lines, so you can kind of see there's a steep hillside to the one side, and it's relatively flat along the eastern portion. And then down here, we've got the school. So we've kind of identified 3 different areas as we look to develop the site. So this hillside area we thought was really good site for single family residential. We looked at multiple uses to redevelop the school, learned a lot as we proposed more dense type of uses, but and then have the lower area available here for development as well. So that's subject property, 13.5 acres. As we came through the process, I got a red light. Does that mean batteries are dead?
They could be.
Could he sit at your desk, Pam? Could he sit at your desk?
Try not to mess up your papers. All right, can you hear me now? Actually sounds much better. All right, so in previous months, we've kind of worked together to come up with the solution for phase 1. As Pam noted, this was approved in previous meetings, 20 lots that conforms to the R2 zoning requirements, 10,000 square foot lots with 75-foot minimum frontage and complies with the other area requirements. And then that left phase 2 for development. We explored different options. Yeah. And fundamentally, we looked at doing more of the same, which seemed like we were, basically just stripping the site. It really didn't seem like it was a good solution. And we also looked at options to do a planned development. And it really seemed to us that moving forward with a planned development seemed to be the correct solution, because it gave us the opportunity to strike a balance between the community's desire to add additional stormwater and have some conservation zones above and beyond what currently is required by the code. So with that being said, we get to our proposed phase 2 here. So as Pam mentioned, our request is to come in as an R4 zone. Now that R4, even though that, there's higher densities and multifamily and other stuff that's included in the R4, the PD component of it, and that's actually mentioned in the land use code, the comprehensive plan, is that they do state that R4, R5 could be expanded, but it's highly recommended to do it with a PD zone or a PD overlay, because that provides Planning Commission the opportunity to control the development, control density, and ensure that it's a quality development. So as you see this here today, we're not proposing apartments. We're not proposing multifamily per se. The townhouses and duplexes that you see here, there's no stacked living. Everything is side by side. So from the ground to the air, that's each one of these boxes represents an individual unit. So we prefer to kind of think about this as attached single family. So within this phase 2 area, we've got our 2 different product types. We've got our townhouses right here, which we which we're looking to do an adaptive reuse of the school. And we've got the other product type right back in here, which is the duplex units. And those duplex units, we're looking to really appeal more towards the empty nester buyers with a zero threshold living from the 2-car garage, no steps into the entry level and so forth, just no steps as they get into these units. So as Pam stated, in order to accomplish this style, we actually had to request a zone change to an R4. How we feel we're still adhering to the spirit of the R2 is that when you take a look at the plan development, it calculates density by taking the total area divided by the minimum lot per unit. So in the R2, that would be taking the 6.3 acres divided by the 10,000 square foot per lot, which nets out to be 28 units. We feel like even though we've asked for a change of zone to an R4, we're actually holding densities that are at or below what is potentially allowable in the R2 zone, what the existing zone today. So next slide, I'd like to this is more of an illustration of the phase 1 in the background showing single family houses. Right here is a redevelopment of the school. Right here is a build out of the duplex units. So what we like to point out right here is that what we're trying to do with this PD is preserve the hillside best as possible. Between that, we're trying to pull the houses away from our eastern property line. So on previous plans, we actually looked at bringing the street down a little closer to this point right here, which meant that houses literally had to get stacked up right along this right of way. We felt like it was a better solution to move this right of way closer to the school move the curb cut closer to the school and essentially bring these houses back away and create more green space down in this area. In addition to those improvements, we also have some stormwater improvements. So with the phase 1 approval, we have the stormwater detention pond in the back here. And then there's also a detention pond proposed in the front. So those two were proposed with phase 1. Phase 2, we further increased that stormwater by adding a proposed detention basin right here. And we're looking at a detention basin right here as well. And then when I invite Stan up, he can kind of provide some more details as to what that means for the development. So just some community issues that we've learned along the way is at prior meetings, we had learned that it's very important for the development in Milford to be a for sale product, not a for rent product. So I just want to highlight that the intent is to have all this either a condominium or a landominium, where the maintenance of not only the exterior but also the grounds will be maintained by an HOA, and the units themselves will be for sale. There's no rental product proposed in this development. Next point that we heard about was density. There was a lot of concerns about density being higher than what the current R2 would allow. And as I just talked about, we feel like we are under the allowable density in the R2. Third, we've got traffic issues, and I'm going to defer to Stan when we get to that point. And also I'm going to let him talk about stormwater. And then when it comes to conservation, he's got some calculations also that Pam had hit upon as far as the amount of open space that we're able to create with this plan. So just kind of moving on, providing some additional details here. So this is a proposed rendering of a redeveloped school. And so what we're proposing to do is basically strip off the front facade and then create the individual townhouse units that marry up to the existing structure. So as most people know in the room, the existing school is a 2-story building. And so what we're proposing to do is you've got your first floor right here, got your second floor right here. And because we're dealing with a very stout structure that has, it's much more stout than a typical residential structure, it's able to handle a 3rd floor right on top here. And that 3rd floor is only geared towards the creating a rooftop patio and a small little recreation loft space. So that's going to be on the front of the structure. The back is simply just attic space. Just kind of broken down here just to help illustrate what the units are. I've just drawn a red line just to help illustrate, how those 5 units end up looking like. So you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the center here, the other thing that this thing affords is the ability to do an amenity for the development. So what we're proposing to do is there's a connector between the existing gym and the classrooms. And we're looking at expanding that hallway so that instead of the standard 8 or 10 foot hallway, we're looking to expand that out a couple feet to make it an actual usable room. It's got plenty of restrooms and stuff to accommodate any type of a party or whatnot that might occur at that location. And also because of the elevation change between the existing parking lot and where the doors are located, we think it would make a great opportunity to just drop a small little plunge pool, just an added little amenity to the development that we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford if we were doing just a straight R2 cookie cutter type of subdivision. So next slide, I just have flat elevations of what the school might look like. And actually, let me just back up here. One thing I forgot to point out is that Pam had asked me to talk about materials a little bit. So I've got just a little point scale right here. Point 1, just pointing out the white elements right here. And that's envisioned to be just a hardy board, hardy siding type of application on the front. Number 2 is a painted brick. So on various, on the side of the gym would be existing. On the side of this building would be existing. So we're looking for a painted brick to match the hardy siding. Element 3 is a metal clad awnings. So right over the top of these entryways, you got a nice little awning right over the top of your front door. And then next is a metal roof. So just kind of pulls the whole thing together. And so it's just, the whole thing is just kind of utilizing that farmhouse design, if any of you guys are familiar with that, where it's got the white and black elements or dark elements and with some peak roofs to it to add a whole lot more interest. And with the articulated facade, it should be pretty appealing to buyers. And not only that, the peaked roofs and stuff provide some nice little private rooftop viewing decks.
I can't tell from this angle, but the peaks on that roof, there's 3 peaks. Are
Yeah.
those actually like gable roofs, or are they just a facade, a triangle facade?
It would actually be a gable roof, and it potentially has usable space in there.
One
So
more time.
it would be a gabled roof,
Yeah.
and behind there would be usable space. And we've got some floor plans to kind of illustrate that a little bit. So next, I've got some just flat elevations of what this could look like. This is kind of the flat elevation of what's along Garfield. This elevation and the height that we get to is under what's currently allowed in the R2 zone. So I believe the maximum height in the R2 zone is 35 feet. And this thing, even being at 3 stories, you typically measure to the midpoint of the roof. And in doing that, I forget what the actual dimension is. I don't have that in front of me, but it's still under the 35 feet. It was asked during our neighborhood meeting, just to give an idea of what the existing school looked like on this elevation. And just to give a reference here on the side, this is kind of the school, the existing school, this box right here. We'd have some small bump outs for these large bay windows. And then obviously you'd have the overbuild for that front kind of loft / rec space. And then as indicated, that from the peak here, it would just slope all the way down to the existing parapet of the school. And then as far as the rear facade, we're just looking at a series of garage doors. So because we're looking at essentially 4 classrooms, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, that would comprise each townhouse unit. Those garages would be like 30 feet wide. So I'm showing a 2-car garage. You could easily throw another door and turn it into a 3-car garage. There's a lot of space, including one of these townhouse units. And at the end of the day, it probably has about 3,000 square feet of living space, possibly more. So just some floor plans on the right here. This is the ground floor. So as you're coming in, this is the entry right here. It's got a living space, kitchen, dining space to the side. It's got a restroom, powder room right there. It's got a pantry / mechanical space right here. And we're essentially using the hallway for our vertical circulation. As stated, 2-car garage in the back, and then plenty of space for kayaks, bikes, and other kind of storage stuff. Up on that second level, we're looking at a rather large master suite. And I'll note that just these plans are very preliminary. So I'd envision that the bathroom in the master suite is going to get much larger, along with the walk-in closet. And then we've got a second floor laundry space, another bathroom that's for the other 2 bedrooms, and then continue up to that rooftop level, or what we're going to do, the overbuild 3rd floor. We're looking at the potential for another bathroom stacked on top of this bathroom. Get a nice little loft space, so you could do a home theater, maybe a little pool table, something else, and then the little rooftop deck right here. And then finally, I just have the, yes, sir.
Each unit has its own rooftop deck, is that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. And then finally, I've got just a front elevation of one of the villa units in the back. So this unit would have another facade just like this. So it mirrored along this line right here at the garage door. So that's where they would marry up. And I apologize, I don't have a floor plan for these guys yet, but we've allocated 2,200 feet on one floor for each one of these units. So it's definitely adequate space to do open floor plan, 2-bedroom unit, maybe a den, with the option to possibly do a second floor bed, 1 or 2 bedrooms up top, or on the south side of the east side of the project, we'll have an opportunity to do some walkouts if instead of going up, somebody wanted to take it down to a walkout basement. And that concludes my part of it. I was going to turn it over to Stan to talk about the specifics, and as far as traffic, stormwater, and the like. So I can either answer some questions now, or we can wait to the end.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So I counted, detention and retention always gets me. So
Retention holds.
detention means it's hold water, or it slows water. Retention means it holds water.
You are correct.
Okay. So are these,
No water.
it's not holding water,
Correct.
it slows the water.
Correct.
So there won't be like little ponds or lakes or things.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. And so there's 4 of those. And I also noticed in the drawing, there's a pipe that you're redoing. Will somebody be addressing that?
Yeah, Stan will get into the specifics.
And the HOA,
Mhm.
you believe, is an answer to the concern that rented property isn't taking as good of care as owner-occupied property with the HOA. You feel that might mitigate that concern?
The HOA, when it comes to the exteriors, that's to keep one of the, so let me just back up here. Or actually just go to here. So if you did not have an HOA that maintained the exterior of these, and we left it up to the individual homeowner, you could have a homeowner that decides, white's nice, but I like purple or pink better, or something like that. So it really helps maintain the controls, the quality, the consistency.
It sets some uniform standard, plus
Yes, sir.
it assures that the association, not the homeowner, maintains the exterior.
That's correct.
And it's a good picture. So each unit has 2 parking spaces, 2 garage spaces, and then spaces across in the parking lot as well, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Those were my questions.
I'm going to assume that you're probably going to be addressing any asbestos concerns in your narrative.
I can actually address that.
Sure. Do you have asbestos concerns?
There has been an environmental done on the school. There is asbestos inside the school. Long story short, we are going to have to address the asbestos whether we demolish the building or not. So we think that doing the adaptive reuse on the school, essentially we're going to have to clean the asbestos whether it's demoed or it's reused. So we've addressed that. We have a report that talks about that, and we've quantified that with the contractor.
Thank you.
Mhm. And actually, last thing, before the front facade would come down, all the asbestos would be
Has to be
taken out.
removed.
It would be removed, yeah. hmm
Is your plan to encapsulate any?
No, removal.
Thank you.
All right, Stan? I'll flip through it for you.
Just give me, probably just give me that page 6, and 6 will be fine.
Pam,
Be the last page.
Pam, move that just a little bit, that screen. Yeah,
That's good.
I'll move it. I mean, I don't want to take away from you guys. Just move this a little bit. Everybody still see it? You see it better? I just. Oh.
Got a button for that. It's kind of weird, but.
Okay.
I moved it, sorry. I didn't realize I made a trapezoid out of it. Slide that chair over in front of it a little more.
I'll have Paul be my pointer then.
There you go. Thanks.
What's up?
Is that going to work? Are you going to be my pointer?
Yeah, I could be your pointer.
All right. So my name is Stan Messerly with Mesco Engineering. Done the site engineering for the project as well as for phase one. As many of you probably know, phase one incorporated a couple stormwater storage facilities. In this case, proposed to be detention basin or a dry basin, so water isn't contained within the facility outside of during rain events. The one, what I called storage number one, is located near the northeast corner of the project. And then we had storage number two for phase one, which was as I faced the school, the front left of the school, or right in front of the gym, I guess. So in the evolution of the phase two plan, we had talked about a number of options relative to stormwater management in this plan. What we felt was a real good modification and real good and resulted in a real good plan for phase two was to take that storage one that Paul's drawing there and remove some of the stormwater that was going to go to storage one. The phase one plan had originally had the vast majority of phase one going to storage number one. So what we went ahead and did was added a storage number three, which is behind the school. So we're taking a large percentage now of what runoff from phase one and storing that in detention number three behind the school. So that does a few things for us, or a couple things at least. One of which is it was a high priority. A real positive result was will allow us to reduce the size of storage number one, the northeast corner storage. That will enable us to preserve additional trees in that area and back off our outlet structure, which is located on the eastern end of that basin, back that off that eastern property line. So that we thought that was a real positive. It also gives us some flexibility to incorporate some storage over and above the regulations with the two basins. So that's our plan. So we've got storage 1, 2, and 3, and then we also have incorporated a storage 4, which is down near that southeast corner. So storage 2 at the front left of the school and storage 4 in the southeast corner, those would store the water that drains towards Garfield today. Then the rest of the site that drains to storage 1 and 3 is this area of site that drains to the swale that's located behind the residence that's located to the east of our project. So that's kind of a synopsis of our storage for the site. As mentioned in the previously by Paul and others, with this phase 2 plan, we really appreciated the ability to back off that east property line as opposed to potentially having residential structures. I think the rear yard of R4 is maybe 35 foot as opposed to having a house 35 foot off that property line. I think we're 70, 80, 90 foot off. So we've added that green space, and certainly we'll look to conserve as many trees as we can. Coming out of that storage 1 that we had in phase 1, that northeast corner again, we had proposed a mounting or some type of system that would further prevent water from flowing to the east to the rear yards of the houses on Apple Lane. So we've got a similar proposal behind units D1 through D6, where we've got a feature, whether it be an earthen mound or perhaps some sort of concrete wall that would divert or direct that flow towards the drainage swale as opposed to the rear yard of our neighbor to the east. We, through the process that we've been in, we certainly have heard our neighbor to the east, directly to our east there on Garfield. She's got many concerns relative to existing situations on her site relative to stormwater management. We've met with her, or rather we did a teleconference with her, Paul and I did, as well as her engineer. Her name's Christine, so I'll go ahead and just say Christine. And we explained to her, our general concept for stormwater management, phase 1, phase 2. One thing that Christine has expressed that we pursue or inquire with the city of Milford would be the potential of taking the effluent or the outfall of stormwater from the detention basin located behind the school to take that water, as opposed to going to the drainage feature that's located behind Christine's barn, take that and pipe it to Garfield. So that water doesn't currently drain towards Garfield, but we did meet with the city engineer on Monday, as well as Pam, and then we also met with the representative, I think it was the director or the fellow that's in charge, Chris, over at the Valley View. So we've discussed some options to potentially do that, to try and appeal to Christine's desire. So that's an option. Those are options that we're going to pursue relative to engineering and design. So in general, I know one other thing I should address. Paul, do you have a slide that shows that impervious surface out at the school area? So this is a slide that represents the existing impervious area out of the school. Impervious surface area would be asphalt, concrete, roof. So impervious being that the water just virtually runs off, it doesn't percolate in. The green area on that drawing would represent the impervious surface areas that exist today that would not be replaced in our proposed development. The blue areas are proposed impervious, so impervious areas that would be part of phase 2 that are not existing. And then the other areas that are, I guess, are kind of white now are existing impervious areas that would be remaining. I show a calculation there. So today, out front, and this would all be drainage area that drains towards Garfield, to that storm piping system along Garfield. There's roughly 1.3 acres of impervious surface area. What you see in that schematic there, the white and the blue, that again would be impervious areas that would be part of phase 2, would amount to 0.68 acres. The green amounts to 0.61. So almost half of the hard surface or impervious area that's out there today would be removed and not replaced in our phase 2 development. So we also feel that's a real plus to what's being proposed, particularly relative to green space and conservation that will be part of phase 2, and certainly elimination of impervious areas will address water quality of that runoff, the oils and so on that would typically run off of an asphalt and so on. We will eliminate or reduce those type of situations. Let's see here. I don't know if there's anything in particular I want to address relative additional stormwater management. Certainly work with the city engineer on what needs to. I know that's one of the conditions that's listed by staff, but certainly would work with the city, as well as continue to work with Christine, our neighbor to the east, and we've tried to address the concerns that we've heard from our neighbors to the east along Apple Lane with this plan, and then also certainly need to work or will work with Valley View since they are on the other side. There's a fairly large stone box culvert that crosses under Garfield Avenue rather, that takes all the water runoff that is part of phase 1, phase 2, and then also some properties on Apple Lane, Christine's property, and then some properties that are west of us that also drain into that drainage area, which amounts to roughly 24 acres of water that drains to that box culvert. Not, in my mind, at least, a significant drainage area, but certainly something that a drainage area that needs to be addressed and properly accounted for and designed for. I think that's about anything. Anything else that you point out, Paul?
That's about it.
So I think, Paul, as I say a little bit about traffic, as staff had pointed out in their report, I have provided some data to the city of Milford relative to the existing peak traffic generated by the school, or the peak traffic that was generated when the school was in operation, and then also anticipated peak traffic for, well, the PD regulations, specify for our area to be rezoned, but per our neighborhood meeting last week, we've also incorporated into that data peak flows for the traffic from phase one. And as staff, Pam in particular, had indicated, what was shown is that the peak, anticipated peak for our phase one and phase two combined would be less than the peak that was generated by the elementary school. And then I think we've kind of touched on conservation in general. Paul pointed out the greens on his renderings, and I think I addressed some on the green space conservation. And I know staff has given you some values as far as percents of the phase two that would remain open. So I don't know if there's anything else, Paul.
No, I think that's probably about it. And then,
Those pictures up, remind me, between detention 1 and 4 along that eastern line, there's 2 woolly gray caterpillars on there.
mhm.
Those are pipes, is that right?
Those are the
Yeah, I just want to remember what that is.
those are some type of a vertical feature, whether it be an earthen mound or,
Those are the mounds. Okay.
yeah. So in other words, the water would be prevented from continuing east, would need to follow that feature and then flow into the existing swale behind Christine's property.
And that begs a question, because there's a break between the one near 1 and the one near 2. Would water naturally be channeled into that break, or is
Yeah,
that
that's correct. That's where the existing drainage feature is. That's where the water all exits today. Yeah,
supposed to go?
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, you're correct. Today, all the water flows through Christine's yard, and there's 0 controls.
A 16-inch drain? Is that what you said?
There's no controls on any of the stormwater, from my understanding. Today,
Today.
Existing.
yes. Let's see. Last but not least, we've got Mike Tonesmeyer here with us. Just if there was any questions regarding the existing structure today and the potential to convert it to a school building. It's convert the school building to the proposed townhouses. As previously mentioned, we work with Mike to construct the Starbucks Chipotle Center over in Loveland, and we've worked pretty well with them and anticipate using them for this project, assuming we get approved. So, if there's any questions for structure. No? Okay. You're off the hook, Mike.
But don't leave.
Said you want to maintain as many trees as you possibly can, which I like that.
Mhm.
We've all seen developments at different places, and of course, if you like trees, that's always. How do you go about doing that and economically process that property without taking a bunch of those trees out of there?
There's obviously going to be a number of trees that need to come out, and let's make no mistake about it. If you're going to put in a detention facility, you're going to have to take some trees out to form the dirt work and that sort of thing. When we're talking about conservation areas, there's there are some significant trees right down in this area that we are going to be able to save that would otherwise be, in the way of somebody's house if we had to do like a standard R2 and basically butt up their yard to the east side of the property line.
How
So-
about trees along the backside of the homes up on Wallace?
Up on Wallace,
Yeah, there's that back line there. Are there trees there that will maintain their,
absolutely. There is that 25-foot buffer yard between the northern property line and our setback that,
that 25 feet, you have no need to take down trees?
no,
It's also part of the conservation easement for phase one.
correct. And then in addition to that, what this plan shows is that we're not essentially touching the hillside right here. All these houses kind of butt up against the toe, I'm sorry,
But up against the,
the toe of the hill.
yeah.
Mhm. And so we're not digging into the hillside at all. So assuming that, these trees aren't dead or for some other reason exhibit some reason that they need to come down, we should be able to keep the majority of trees within this area.
Do you have in your plan, any accounting for adding new trees to the landscapes, like trees, not just a,
Yeah, and we're going to have to address that in our landscape plan, but we have no objection to adding additional trees to the landscape. And I would definitely anticipate adding additional trees down around this basin, and you probably see some more trees and some of the entryways and whatnot. So absolutely.
Any other questions from Planning Commission for the applicant or his team? Okay. We will open up the floor then to those in the room who have questions or want to make comments. I did remember something else I meant to tell you. When you're asking your question or making your comment, please direct it to the Planning Commission. If it's a question that we would like the applicant or his team member to answer, we'll ask him to keep track of those questions. And once we've heard from everyone in the room, we'll give him an opportunity, and those online, we'll give them an opportunity to answer all those questions. The meeting is being recorded, so we want to keep the conversation limited to those that have a microphone in front of them, so that we can get a good record of the meeting.
Did you get to hold?
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay.
It's up to him.
Thanks. So again, anyone, please come forward to the microphone, state your name, this one over here. Thank you. State your name and address for the record.
Donna Lucky, 910 Wallace. I've heard conversations regarding a traffic study for Garfield. Has there been a traffic study involving Wallace? The traffic up over Wallace is pretty bad at times. And I certainly could see these additional units causing more traffic because that's how they'll get to Kroger's, to 275 and such.
Okay.
So I'd like to see perhaps that same study involving Wallace.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Anyone else?
Hello, Sam Pashang, 613 Garfield. I think there's a few inconsistencies with what they've shown. If they could put the elevation back of the Milford South School on the screen. Is that possible? So where's the hill? You don't see the hill behind it. So there's a big hill there, and if you take in account topography, and my biggest issue with this site is the handling of the topography. So we should be looking at a hill, and from this distance, we should be looking at the back ends of about 3 houses over the top of that. And there's going to be, with the installation of the detention pond, there's going to be, removal of trees. So we should really see those houses in that view and the hill. The rush hour traffic study, school doesn't get out during rush hour. So when people are coming in, going back to their housing or coming out, that's all going to be during rush hour. And I think a traffic study needs to be done because it's not a school getting out at 3:30. It's rush hour is going to be at 4:35. Their density math is correct, I'm assuming. But if you take in account topography again, and you go back to that hillside, feasibility wise, you're going to have a hard time selling lots on that hill. So I don't think they truly have the same amount of single family lots. The math works, but you factor in the trying to put a house on that hillside, the lot cost goes through the roof, and I think that's an inconsistency. As a resident, I would like to see single family homes. I like to see the school go away, and I'd like to just see single family homes. That's just my personal opinion. And I just have one question. Is Timothy Baird a part of your organization?
He is a partner in some projects, and he is a partner in this project.
Okay, so he was part of the Kenwood Towers debacle and the Bear Creek debacle. That's all I have.
Lisa McKinney, 6 Hogan Drive. My property meets this project on the west side. My backyard meets the school board property. I think that we all want to see residential there if we have to see anything. I mean, I don't think that anyone objects to that. However, the density is really troubling. Sam and I both have mentioned this hill. It's the school and the east of the school is flat, but everything else is hill and woods and ravines. And so I agree with Sam's concerns about the hill and what it's going to take to put lots there and the cost and whatnot. The density is odd because it's the same acreage as Wallace Grove, but it's double the units. And so the density is pretty thick for this little plot of land, in my opinion. On March 6th, City Council of 2018, City Council changed the zoning of this property for a very specific reason. And as I read through the minutes of that meeting, former Mayor Albrecht, Council Member Brady, and Law Director Manier all stated that their purpose was to have that property at R2 for single family homes in keeping with the comprehensive plan. Riverwalk is awesome. We have Riverwalk, but multifamily units, whether they be townhouses or duplexes, is very hard to keep them out of rental. Absolutely. And the HOA thing that you asked about, I've lived in townhomes within an HOA. It didn't mitigate it being a rental. I rented that property. All the HOA did was mandate to the homeowner, you have to keep it a certain way. You can't put this there or use these colors. So an HOA, unless it's specifically written as such, will not mitigate the possibility of it becoming a rental. Changing zoning in a city that's less than 4 square miles is really a big deal. And I think that it should be very, very carefully considered, especially going to R4, because it's very hard to get it back from R4 once it goes there. The comprehensive plan was created for a reason. You heard Ms. Holbrook talk about Milford being 50-50 about owner occupied and rentals. And I just bet that down the road, some of these units will be rentals. However, if the property is sold, then I would think that the school district would then be able to tear down that building, and that would remove that obstacle for the developer as far as his costs and what he needs to put into it to recoup his investment. I don't understand why the school district is not required to tear down a building on a property that's not zoned for the building that's on it. That has perplexed me from the minute the zoning changed. Anyhow, I think that's about it. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Deborah Floyd. I live at 39 Cleveland Avenue. It's fortuitous that I'm following two neighbors that I've never met because I think they express a lot of the concerns that I have. First, in regards to this particular proposed development, it was approved for single family homes. It was the R2, but now, like so many other approved plans, here come the changes. Now we need it to be an R4. We'd like multiple family units and townhouses that look like they belong in New York or Hyde Park. I'm sorry, those do not look like farmhouses to me. Yeah, they're gray and white and black, but they don't look like anything we have in our little town of Milford. While I appreciate the developer's vision to include green spaces, they are not making considerations in terms of what keeps to the spirit of our little town. And I think it's the Planning Commission's responsibility to speak to our comprehensive plan and preserve that. And perhaps more importantly, they're not considering, although they have addressed the issues here today, but I went through all the meetings at SEM meetings that stayed here till 10 o'clock at night, meetings that said there'd only be 4 more cars coming through, all of which would not be true. I don't think there's a full consideration in some way that we can hold them accountable once they build it and we find out that the increased traffic is unmanageable because we are already congested on the few streets that we have. And this water plan, while I think it looks good on paper, the runoff right now, every time it rains, you flood the streets of Mill, Gatch, Laurel, Cleveland, and Mound. On Cleveland, I don't even have berms any longer because of all the storm damage. And not to mention what will happen at Valley View. You did mention putting up some earthen, and then you said, or maybe concrete. These are important considerations because they're what we're going to be looking at. Second, in regards to the historic Milford and the planning board's recent decisions, I want to tell you a story. 15 years ago, I moved from New England to Westchester and began working at Cincinnati Country Day School. One day on a packed school bus headed to the nature center, our route took me down Cleveland Avenue. I nearly insisted the bus stop until someone told me, "What is this place?" Milford, one of the students said. Well, it took me 4 years to make it happen and 1 divorce. But I finally had a home in this place. When I moved into my dreamy little house on Mound Avenue, I felt something I hadn't in years. I felt at home. At that time, downtown was a bit bleak, unless you wanted to buy a gun or antiques, a fountain, exchange some coins, or get your hair done. I wished for a coffee shop. It happened. I wished for an ice cream shop. It happened. I wished for somewhere to eat outside. It happened. When the bank burned down, I held my breath and wished it hadn't happened. And then, like a phoenix from the ashes, it reappeared in all its historic glory, not stepping over its original footprint by even 1 toe. It now houses a wine bar, yoga studio, and offices. Excuse me. When the Millcroft was endangered, neighbors rallied to save it from the wrecking ball, and the distillery has honored our history by preserving this landmark. These good neighbors, these good merchants and neighbors have been filling vacant spaces while also filling the needs of our little town. In fact, sometimes I used to feel downright smug about Terrace Park, who couldn't even manage to keep a coffee house running. Well, the joke's on me. They can walk here to eat and drink and shop and then walk home to quiet. No daily ambulance runs to a facility that now wants to expand. No waiting 5 minutes to cross their street to their neighbors like I have to on Cleveland. And yes, the joke is on us because that's all changed. We're not just restoring our historic downtown. We are crowding it, filling it the tiniest spaces with the largest of places. So I started this little talk with a story, and I'd like to end with one. My apologies to Dr. Seuss for changing a few of his words, but his message of preservation and restraint resonates. He says in the Lorax, business is business and business must grow. But that's not the real story of the Lorax. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but most of you remember the story. The Onceler shows up and he says, I'm just going to take down one tree. And then he continues. So I'm just going to read a couple passages and then stop. Way back in the days when Milford was still green and the pond was still wet and the clouds were still clean, I came to this glorious place. I felt a great leaping of joy in my heart. I knew just what I'd do. I'd unload my cart and start building. This is when the Lorax pops up. He says, I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. And I guess we're the Lorax, the citizens of Milford, the people who live here, the people who bought homes here, the people who've seen it grow and grow and been so delighted and happy for it, and then say, whoa, there's a danger ahead. So we are the Lorax, and we speak for the trees. We speak for the trees have no tongues. And I'm asking you, sir, and I would say the planning board, to stop at the top of my lungs. I repeat, cried the Lorax, I speak for the citizens. I speak for the trees. And then the Onceler got very mad. And he said, well, I have my rights, sir, and I'm telling you, I intend to go on doing just what I do. And for your information, you Lorax, you voters, you residents, I'm figuring on biggering and biggering and biggering and biggering. And at that very moment, we heard a loud whack from outside in the fields of Milford that no longer exist. Came a sickening smack of an axe on a tree, and they heard that tree fall. Gone were the truffalo trees. Gone were the barbaloots in their barbaloot suits. Gone were the humming fish and the swomy swans. And it comes to a place where it's very dark. And it says, but now that you're here, unless someone like you cares a whole lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So, you are in charge of the last truffalo seeds of Milford, and truffalo trees are what everybody needs. So I ask, thank you for indulging me for reading that you preserve what's beautiful about our community and stop overbuilding for revenue. The needs are what the Onceler made, and that rhymes with greed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Scott Naylor. Can you hear me? Okay. I live at 28 Apple, immediately adjacent to the property in question. And this is the third meeting I've been to. And the question before was, well, what about phase two? You know, we see all these nice drawings for phase one. And what about a zoning variance? And we were told that, oh, well, we don't want to talk about a zoning variance. We don't want to talk about, you know, phase two. We just want to get our foot in the door, phase one approved. Now we're back here and we see all these pretty pictures, how they can maximize their profits, completely disregarding the R2 zoning. what happened to any options? Did they even entertain R2 zoning, or were they just all along stringing us? Honestly, I don't trust these people to do what's in Milford's best interest. I hope you guys listen to the neighbor, because they sure aren't. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lee Hatter, and I'm at 29 Apple Lane. And I've noticed on some of your pictures here about the so-called mound, and then maybe doing a concrete thing, and then it stops. Well, water, if it's running, it's not just going to jump from this opening to the next and then run on down. Is that going to run all the way down the property? What kind of a barrier is going to be put there? Am I going to have to look at this monstrosity and all these kids running and coming onto my property? Or is there going to be a big fence put there down along the property? Nobody talks about that. But to back up a little bit on the R2, I too was here at the beginning of all this, excuse me. And we were definitely only going to do R2, pretty much promised by Fred Albrecht, the former mayor. We weren't even going to consider multi-usage. And now all of a sudden, now they're wanting to change it again. And I don't like that a bit. You know, what's going to go in the gymnasium? Nobody ever even talked about that tonight. I was waiting for them to move down to that end of the building to find out what's going into that gymnasium there. All this water runoff, they have no clue of what the water is like. None whatsoever. And they're talking, and Deborah was talking about water running down on Mound and Cleveland and all them down there. It runs down my street too. I don't have curbs. I haven't had curbs. I've been there since 1970 and have no idea of any curb being even thought of being installed. All they keep doing is building the street up higher. So now all the water runs from the street into the yards, and all the debris runs into the yards. Thing on the paper said that they were going to have the street cleaners come and clean the curbs. I'm like, well, how in the hell is he going to clean curbs on my street? Well, I watched him today. Flew down, flew right back in the middle of the street. What good did that do? I got pictures of him. It's crazy. You know, and they talk, has the hole ever been fixed up on Wallace that was right beside the drain up there? We talked about that the last time, remember? Has it been fixed? I doubt it. I had to deal with that for 1.5 years sitting out in front of my house. You know, this is all fine and dandy pictures, but it's not happening. It seems like every time they get an idea, they make it seem like the best thing since sliced bread, and it turns out to be molded. It's crazy. You know, now they're cutting it up on High Street too, putting in these big things. What are they going to look at? That broke down fountain place and the roofs of all them beat up buildings and pay $745,000 for them things? There's no way in hell I would pay that much money for them. None. And the congestion on Garfield, it's the new bypass for Milford. Has any of you been on Garfield Avenue?
Sure.
Yep.
You sit out there and wait on traffic to get out? No, you're one of the ones that zoom by. Exactly. He's talking about tests being done and traffic surveys. There hasn't been a traffic survey on that road for years. You know, another thing about the asbestos in there. They was talking about asbestos. Oh, the asbestos, it was remediated. It's never been done because we just talked about it again tonight. It's never been done because I was going to ask for proof that it was done already. which everybody said that it was done. It's never been done. So what are we getting at here? I mean, a few houses, I don't have a problem with that. But to dig into them hillsides, which that's what they're going to have to do, the people on Wallace Grove and up there, it's pathetic what they're going to have to look at. Myself, you know, they're going to have to take out the trees, because once they start taking out trees, it's going to mess up the water table and the trees are going to start falling. And then when one falls on our houses and we call up, well, we just had a tree fall, what are you going to do about it? I don't want to hear the answer that I heard the last time. What's on your property now, it belongs to you. I don't want to hear that. So there's a lot more planning that needs to be done to this before we decide anything. And I can raise as much hell as the next person. I'm going to tell you that right now. But this is not going to take place like this. It's not. We'll do whatever we have to do as a group, as a city, but it's not going to happen. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Certainly.
Lisa McKinney, 6 Hogan Drive. The only thing, honestly, that I would like to do, since this is the application for the zoning change and your consideration for that, I just want to read some quotes out of the minutes of the March 6, 2018 City Council meeting where the site was changed to R2 and the reasoning that was given to the residents for why City Council was doing that. So here are the quotes in that discussion with public comments. Mr. Albrecht stated that he is really glad that we were all there. We share the same concerns, he said. There will be an ordinance on the books that we will be voting on tonight. It would change it to R2 zoning, which is strictly single family. It is to the benefit of the city to follow our comprehensive plan and to follow what is already there in the neighborhood. The contract that is on the table now will be with responsible residential home builder. Everyone's goals are looking forward to being met. Formal Councilman Mr. Brady, our interest is to keep with the comprehensive plan and to look for single-family homes versus apartments or multifamily. We are interested in changing the zoning so it wouldn't continue to be institutional. Mr. Albrecht, again, thanking Mr. Hatter for coming and sharing his views. Our visions and hopes are that we can do some things on council to make sure it is single-family homes. Mr. Albrecht said that we are going to change things to make sure Milford South is residential, single-family residence. We are going to initiate the process tonight. It will take more public meetings, however. Law Director, Mr. Manier, the city is going to initiate this change because based on the comprehensive plan, because that is the best use for the property and because all the properties surrounding the property are residential. Across the street is R2 and surrounding it is R3, I believe. And R2 is less dense than what could be done there now under institutional. Mr. Albrecht again, it was offered many years ago as institutional when someone wanted to put a school there. As soon as this became known to us, council came together and said to change this to R2 zoning and return it to the zone it probably was many, many years ago as residential. Mr. Manier said that we are doing this to make this property compatible and user-friendly with the surrounding neighborhoods. Mr. Hatter at one point said that he overheard the developer was thinking of putting 41 patio homes on the property. Currently, it does come out as 40 units on the property. property. Mr. Albrecht said that patio homes would be multifamily, and that is incorrect information. And that's the conclusion of the comments I wanted to share, and perhaps just refresh any memory of that meeting and what the intention of the city was on March 6, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brenda Jacoby. I live at 707 State Route 28, but I did live on Potawatomi. I still go there every day to take care of a 98-year-old lady. So I'm in that neighborhood all the time. And the flavor of that subdivision is small and neighborly and not dense. There's no density there. You do have neighbors, but you're not on top of each other. You don't see them very often either sometimes. But if you go down Garfield, the street is a small subdivision street. It's very old-fashioned. Is that street going to be gone? Are they going to have to widen it because of the traffic concerns? I hope not, because that will change everything. And I used to live in Westchester, Ohio. I grew up on a dairy farm back in the 60s. And I see what happens when a place just goes crazy, you know, and they don't stay true to what the place was originally. You know, there was dairy farms everywhere. I went to Lakota, which was teased about being in the middle of a cow pasture, and it was. So that was great. I loved growing up there. And we have so many people coming in to this small area of downtown Milford that it changes everything. Those townhouses along the river, no, but they're there. And unless a great big huge flood comes along and takes them on down the road, they're still going to be there. And now we want another one here. And I see there's another thing coming up here where they want more townhouses down there by the river. We're just a small town and we should stay that way for the flavor. And I know this is a great tax base for Milford, but the citizens who have lived here all these years, a lot of them do not want to see this change. So I hope you will take that into consideration, that once this is gone, it's gone. And people are not going to be the same here in Milford. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to our online guests, is there anyone else in the room that wanted to speak? Okay. Is there anyone?
I'd like to speak as a resident.
Can you wait till we hear from the other residents?
Sure.
Thank you. Is there anyone queued up?
Yes. Chris McBroom. That's all right. Chris?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready to hear from you. If you'd state your name and address for the record, and then your comments.
Chris McBroom, 729 Garfield Avenue. I live right next door, and I was referenced several times during the presentation by the applicant. I think people have adequately addressed the zone change, and as was with the phase one, my main concern is directing all the stormwater from an altered landscape to cross my property without an easement. The storm drainage ordinance that is pretty short and is directive for when storm drainage facilities shall be required is that the developer shall provide in every subdivision drains, culverts, other works to dispose of all water originating on or flowing across the property without inundating or damaging neighboring streets, roads, lots, or other properties. And I hear several times, well, this is where it always goes. This is where it currently goes. But the property is going to be altered. So it's not the same as it was. You can't take water and put berms up to direct it across my property without an easement. It's just not permitted. It's not legal. There are also provisions in this ordinance that can require the city to require the developer to put in larger storm sewers if there is property from off-site flowing across their property. Now, why, when the whole place is going to be torn up, the streets are going to be torn up, they're going to be putting in sanitary sewers and utilities and roads, why can't we just pipe the stormwater drainage to the storm sewers? I don't understand that. I didn't understand it for phase 1, and I definitely don't understand it for phase 2, because the whole place is already going to be torn up. It's not like we're taking out any other trees. And I know Stan said that he had a meeting on Monday. Well, like, let's wait till the last minute to meet with the city and Valley View. And we've got some possibilities. We might do this and maybe we're going to do this. Well, I think it should be required that the detention ponds drain into a storm water system, which needs to be, if it's not adequate, currently it needs to be upgraded by the developer. As far as rental units go, I think if you're going to approve this zone change, that you ought to put a plat restriction on and a requirement that there be a restriction in the deeds to these owners that the properties cannot be rented. There's no other way to stop them from being rented. You can set up a separate LLC for every owner and you can just rent it and rent it and rent it. And you can still say it's owners. But you're gonna have to put in something and require that they cannot be rented. Miami Woods, great big condominium development on the other side of Milford, you cannot lease your condominium. It's in the rules, it's in the HOA. The HOA is supposed to be responsible for the phase 1 stormwater system. I assume you will be putting in a requirement that the HOA for phase 2 will also be required to maintain the stormwater maintenance plan. And I don't know whether it's going to be 1 HOA or 2 HOAs, but they're going to have to be some kind of cross easements so that they can get on each other's properties if it's not going to be one system. So those are my comments. Thank you for listening. I think that you can't say that you can just let the water flow where it's always gone when you're going to be making so many changes to the property that it's going to be a completely different water system than it is now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I don't know. Nobody else has their hand raised. They want to tell them that you raised their hand.
Okay. Anyone online that would like to speak, if you would use the raise your hand button on Zoom, then we can recognize you. No? Okay. We don't see anyone else raising their hand online, so we're presuming that no one else online wants to participate verbally. Thank you. We'll turn it back over to the applicant, if you could address any of the questions or concerns that have been raised.
Is there any specific questions that you need more detail on? In our presentation, we feel like the proposed development is in the spirit of the R2 because of the densities proposed. And we feel like because it's a PED, we do have the opportunity to enhance the stormwater system where there currently is no controls. And in addition to that, we have the opportunity to save a portion of the site and not do additional grading and so forth. That allows some saving some existing trees, et cetera.
Speak up, please, kind of mumble a little bit.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to mumble.
Well, I mean, it's my ears, so.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Well, there was a question about the traffic study, peak hour for school time versus peak hour otherwise. Is there a distinction that was made? Is there some clarification that we need when you're looking at a peak hour for a school? I don't know how the ITE.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Stan on the traffic study.
So, the IT establishes those peak rates. They don't necessarily establish a time frame, but I guess I would certainly agree that schools let out at different times when employee or work's let out, but you also have to consider extracurricular activities, which would be let out at the same time as rush hour. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think your question is, does ITA differentiate relative to the time of the day when those peak hours occur? And my understanding is it's no, those charts don't address that specifically. They just address a peak.
I think the question was, are we looking at apples to apples when we have a number for a school and a number for
again, the peak could very well occur at times when schools let out, or, well, to back up a step, it's my experience that the morning rush hour coincides fairly close to school and work. At least that's what I've seen. So then you're looking at an afternoon time slot. I think generally schools let out in the neighborhood of 3 to 3:30, maybe some earlier, some later, I don't know. And generally, I think the work peak hours are probably 4 to 5. But you also have to throw into that equation the extracurricular activities. So if you've got kids that are there doing band, kids are doing whatever, I know extracurricular activities seem to be a lot more emphasized now than they were when I went to school. So what I'm being told is that there's quite a bit of traffic. I know I go by a particular school that there's traffic certainly very heavy when I bike at 5 o'clock from that school. So I think it is an apples to apples, and once you consider extracurricular activities, and again, I think I would say that the only potential where they don't overlap would be the evening. But I think when you throw in extracurricular, you've got the same overlap that you would have rush hour and extracurricular.
Okay.
Is that your professional opinion or your personal opinion?
That's experience, which would be personal opinion, and experience, which is professional opinion.
Thank you.
Someone asked about, does Garfield need to be widened? I haven't heard anything tonight that leads me to believe that that's the case, but if any of our developer or experts could, is that accurate based on the traffic?
Well, the analysis I provided is based on the Ohio Department of Transportation regulations. Those regulations are telling me, based on our peak count, that there is no widening, no lane, no turn lanes, none of that is necessary for our development.
Okay. And then, Tim, maybe this is more of a question to you. There was a question about a traffic study for any surrounding streets, for instance, Wallace. How does that work in our?
So because the development volumes are not such that would warrant a traffic study, a detailed traffic study for the development in the immediate area, It also would not require a traffic study. It would be extended onto the surrounding road network. As that would have to be a city initiative to study traffic beyond other streets.
Wait, are you saying that's because the current traffic pattern doesn't sufficiently require
By
to do that? It's not enough at this point?
From this, the development that's put in front of us in the traffic study that they have provided, it shows that a full traffic study is not warranted or needed. I believe the threshold is 100 trips to prepare a detailed traffic study, and we have not met those thresholds to have that study. The volumes are.
The volume is under that.
Is under that.
Okay.
Obviously, lots of questions about stormwater.
I made note of a couple of things that I think probably need to be asked only because they were asked, and so we'll just get it out there.
Okay.
The gym is a residence.
That's correct.
Thank you. A lot of these folks haven't had the benefit of the packet of materials that we're swimming in up here. So I just want to go ahead and get that kind of, some of these questions floated out there. Now, this was brought up during the phase 1 discussion, and it isn't really, hasn't been brought up this time. I just want to ask hypothetically, what are the market values you're ascribing to these units? Just broad brush strokes, please.
Just ballpark, we had estimated that the villas would probably start in the 400s, and probably about the same for the townhouses, probably a little higher on the townhouses.
Pam, this kind of goes to a question about how the mechanics of this goes. What is the durability of the PUD once, supposing this is not approved, supposing this escalates to city council and they supposing they approve it, if Mr. Shermer does not opt into what is approved or declined or whatever the case may be, any following purchaser must abide by the PUD that is overlaid on that council approves.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so
Anybody that would buy it or, take over the project
Mhm.
would have to comply with what council approved.
Might approve.
Might approve, right.
Right. Okay, so this is kind of, regardless of the actual title of the zoning, I look at these densities, it's densities as modified by your PUD overlay you're putting on this. And so those densities would remain as part of any ongoing purchaser.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to reformulate another question as I'm kind of working on this. I'm sorry, I haven't got it reformulated yet.
Aha.
Lois?
Anybody else pick up on questions from the audience that we need clarification on?
There was an issue about, at least one person brought up about the look and feel not being consistent with South Milford, that sort of thing, or not being a farmhouse. Was that the term you used, farm?
A lot of times they'll say modern farmhouse design if with this particular look that's painted white, whether it's painted brick or white siding or a very light color with the dark windows. And generally that's kind of referred to as a farmhouse look.
And when you said you were talking about metal, which right off the bat just kind of makes me go, eh. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that and what the look might be.
It looks like a metal roof structure. A lot of times on these farmhouse structures, you might see a metal roof. I mean, if it's a huge deal, we can convert it to asphalt shingles, but the metal roof on these farmhouse buildings is actually a more
part of that.
It's a more luxurious look, actually.
It's actually more durable too.
That too.
Luxurious being a term of personal taste.
Correct. If you like to live in barns.
And did we confirm that the density is lower than the R2 requirements for this plan?
I've been running the numbers on this as we've been talking, and it's actually significantly less dense than what is required for R2.
That's what it
I
seems
believe
to me.
R2, they could build 28 homes.
Yeah.
One of the questions that was brought up was the considerable cost of building on a hill, and which really isn't our issue at all. If it costs them a lot of money to build on a hill, it costs them a lot of money to build on a hill. That's not my problem.
That's their problem.
It's a problem that passes on to what they have to put in their price. So some of the questions were outside the realm of that, but I have questions I'd like to add to that as a homeowner when the chair will recognize me.
If you have questions, we'll save our discussion for a discussion period, but if you have questions, please.
I have questions. And I won't share personal observations. I'll just share questions. So I want to make sure I'm clear. And first off, I want to share an appreciation that you went and you doubled down. You knew we wanted phase 2. You brought us phase 2, and that you're trying to follow the spirit of the law. So those are all good things, and we'd like to see that. And I'm sticking with just the questions here. So what you're saying is you might buy this land if we change our rules and adopt a different zoning so that the economic feasibility is there for you. Is that right? You want us to change the rule or else it's economically not feasible for you. Is that correct?
If we didn't think that plan was feasible, we wouldn't advocate for this plan.
Well, but you're asking for a change. So what I'm saying
We
is
are.
the change feasible is the feasibility there without us making a change?
Right now, we're focused on this plan.
I'm talking about this plan. Is the feasibility of this plan, it's not there if you can't get zoning change because you can't do it this way, correct?
It's difficult to do it without this plan.
I understand that.
Yes.
Just simple answer, simple question.
It's the best I got.
I'll add comment later. Thank you. Done?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You said not to comment, discuss, just ask a question.
Maybe you had more questions.
I want to be clear on that question. I got no other question. That's the question before us.
Okay. There was a comment about someone possibly purchasing one of these units and then renting it out. Yes, I know the developments can put restrictions on, but I know that I could rent my house if I wanted to move out. And so it's
I'm
a
an
little.
R2 and I can rent my house if I wanted to. I mean, I don't know why that's an argument.
Yeah.
I
mean,
ran
anybody
some
can
numbers
rent a
on that
home.
while we were talking about that, and I kind of based it on my earlier guess, and you confirmed it, somewhere in the $333,000 a piece. I mean, that would mean a mortgage at a wildly lower interest rate than we currently have, somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,500 a month.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You'd be buying a home. You wouldn't be renting it.
Yeah.
You just can't at that price. So, yeah, I didn't buy that argument. But There's some other issues, as we went down, I was writing down this list of what you had addressed in your plan. And what I had written down, these are owner occupied residential homes in the form of attached townhomes, basically, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So, but they're residential. This does increase the percentage of owner residential homes in Milford, which I think, desperately need. We just talked about the rentability of these kind of properties at that price point is not really feasible. It can be done, but I could do it with my home too in R2. So I don't think that's a factor. Density seems to be, John, I think you confirmed this with the numbers, is lower than what's required in R2. So as I go down this list, I keep seeing things that meet R2 requirements in an R4. It's meeting the spirit of R2 without, but making it economically feasible to actually build a property by just changing it to R4. I'm trying to find where this is a problem. I see the water issue problem. That seems to be something that's of great concern, especially to the property owners nearby and around, obviously. And I don't know if that's been addressed or not. I don't know that I have the technical know-how or experience to know if that's been addressed or not. So if you want to speak more to that, I'd love to hear it. I'm not sure I'm understanding how that is mitigated. It seems like we have an increase of local business in a walkable way from a community that's walkable to downtown Milford, which helps our local businesses. That's something we want out of an R2. I don't know, it seems to be well within the requirements of an R2, just with the loophole of changing it to R4, so we can have a residential property that's sustainable and profitable for a developer. I don't know where that's bad. Again, I'm trying to figure out the water issue. That to me is the big one. It's very hard to say yes while thinking that these guys over here are going to have serious issues or continue to have serious issues, which they're having. So that's the one holdup for me. But otherwise, I think it's actually a pretty good plan, given this, again, meeting so many R2 needs that we wanted back in 2018, being part of that commission. That's what we wanted. And that's why we said R2. But if it can be done in R4 without the cons that come with it, I don't see an issue there. But again, if you can just try to bring this clarity to how we mitigate this water problem from stormwater.
Sure. Well, the current subdivision, Milford subdivision regulations and Milford water management regulations mitigate development and stormwater management. Certainly, we would have to meet those requirements and be approved by the city engineer. And I will note that one of the staff's contingencies or conditions is provide stormwater maintenance plan before approval of final plat. So that has to be submitted and approved before, I believe, final plat would be a planning commission approval.
Okay. So basically, our guys make sure that's not a problem. Do they then make that recommendation based on that to us or to city council, or where does that go?
Can I address that?
Yes.
Okay, so this meeting happens tonight, and you may have conditions. You make a recommendation. You know that list of three recommendations: be granted, change it, or not be granted. So that's what you do tonight. Then that information goes to city council.
Gotcha.
And council will we'll have a public hearing just like we had tonight. So council will be able to hear all of the residents speak for and against.
Gotcha.
If council approves it, then the next step is a final development plan that will come back to you guys, and that's the stormwater management plan. That's where you get into the kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, this stormwater management plan, exactly what does it say?
Okay, and at that point, Pam, that's when we know whether they met what we wanted out of this or not.
Because Tim,
Gotcha.
you reviewed this stormwater management plan. All that information will be brought back to you guys. And so you'll have the final say. You'll say, if this is not acceptable, then no. But at that point, we're into the nitty gritty, the details of the plan at that point.
And historically, on that particular provision for R2, we were still reeling from the battle wounds of Milford, Maine at that point, if I recall correctly, as far as the timing goes. And we were desperately not interested in seeing some sort of quasi-institutional establishment land there.
Correct. That's correct.
As a council member, that was the big thing. We did not want apartment buildings. So that's why we went with
Right.
An apartment complex.
yes, complexes.
Now, to address that as far as it relates to duplex units, and that is a primary differentiator between the R2 and the other R districts, is that R2 does not allow two-family homes. Am I getting that about right? I think that's correct. One thing that does happen here is you take two single-family homes, what amounts to patio homes, and push them together with a common wall. This is not two stacked on top of each other. This is two that are sharing a common firewall. One of the benefits of that from a planning perspective is it actually generates more open space as opposed to having this gratuitous setback wedged in between two freestanding structures. And the attendant loss of efficiency of the land, loss of efficiency of energy, loss of efficiency of infrastructure, et cetera.
Right.
I have a hard time seeing a downside to that point.
Right.
I know
Dino, I wanted to address what Dino had said about, that's up to our guys, right?
Yeah.
So I remember sitting in a meeting in here a month or two ago, and we talked about our guys and their handling of a hole in the middle of Apple that had been there for a year and a half. And we built a whole new building that they can work out of, but we couldn't fill a hole on Apple Lane. So the residents' confidence in our guys taking care of it is another issue that needs to be addressed by us.
Our guys have had some changeover too recently.
Right, but that's, and we may have changes again. You never know. But the point is, I think saying, oh, our guys will take care of that isn't an answer that I would feel comfortable with as a resident at this point. That doesn't make that go away. That our guys will take care of that. It's still an issue. It needs to be in the agreement, not something that's referred to and pushed off.
But still has to be approved by our city engineer.
Regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
As a former public employee, I need to just say, we're comparing two different things.
I got that.
Maintenance of the streets versus compliance with our stormwater management regulations are two different things. And they both need to be done to the highest level possible. Understood. And if we fell short, that's a problem. But the stormwater management plan that's proposed for any future development on this site will be reviewed by the city engineer.
Correct.
Check for compliance with our regulations. And I have every confidence that
Good.
it will be done well.
I think some of them do not. I think that's a point that we need to consider. That's what I said. I didn't say I don't trust our city engineers. You may feel that way. I didn't say that.
I know some comments were made about the look and the fit in the neighborhood. I think the duplexes or villas do like blend in better. I mean, I'm just thinking about Garfield Avenue. That will stand out it's because of the white. Like things on Garfield Avenue, there's not a lot of white that I can picture.
Right.
Like that might be something that might be.
To be semi-facetious,
think of-
we get another shot at that.
Right. Well, it talks about materials. We have to know the materials, but I wonder if
Right.
color will fall in that category. Like,
Yes, and you're
Usually-
correct. You will get another shot at all that.
right. I want to make sure because usually we do, and the colors listed or materials are listed. So I want to make sure color is an option because I think a different color would help it blend in better and fit the feel of the neighborhood better.
But we don't have to, Scott's
No,
added the
no.
zoning question.
Right.
One thing that does, and I noticed that there was common R5 that creeped in early in the process and is not there anymore. Have I got that correct? Okay. I guess what then becomes the next question, okay, well, what do you do with this 5-unit chunk of building plus the 6th unit down there at the gym, et cetera? Those are 3,000 square foot units?
Correct. The gym's a little larger.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood the spirit of what's going on here.
Yeah.
These are not 20-foot wide townhouses by any means. These are 30, wait, excuse me?
30 feet wide.
30-foot wide each,
56 feet deep.
56 feet deep.
Right. It's a big house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
To put it in perspective, if I may, it's from that wall to here, and the width of this room plus 10 feet.
10 feet longer that way?
From that to that, 10 feet longer this way.
So to the hallway.
So
almost,
out to the end of the hall,
To the hallway,
Yeah,
about.
yeah, it's about
to give you a physical presentation.
bigger than the footprint of my house.
So by extension, we wind up with what amounts to 5 single-family homes with common walls. I know we're mincing things here and splitting hairs, but I just comparing that to help me out. How many units are just right down the street west of here?
Yeah.
How many units are in that building?
In Riverwalk?
Excuse me?
In Riverwalk? Or where?
Opposite the end of Gatch Street.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how many are there.
I don't know. I'm just kind of giving this a gut
Yeah.
check. Okay, thanks.
We've definitely wandered into discussion. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it possible, like one of the ladies mentioned on the Zoom, I think it was Miss McBroom, adding a condition for the HOA, is that even appropriate at this point, or does that come later?
What kind of
The condition being can't be rented. Is that?
It might be a law director question, but
Yeah.
I hate
It seems to be a legal thing.
Well, one of the staff recommended conditions was providing the stormwater maintenance plan before the final plat. And so that maintenance plan would be either an opportunity or an encumbrance on the HOA and the group of owners as a whole. I got that right? Okay. All right.
You know, another thing that could make it economically feasible would be if the guys that own it would sell it at a reasonable price since it was given to them so that it can be developed in keeping with R2. Just saying. That would be nice. That would be community spirit.
As far as I know, we live in a capitalist society.
That's true. We live in a capital and a democratic society. Which trumps which? Pardon the phrase.
The city needs to be telling people how much they should sell their property.
No,
That's kind of what you just said.
I'm not the city.
You're sitting
Just
up
one
here.
person. Just one person. You know, the notion that before us is a recommendation or a request to, I bought my house 21 years ago. My house was falling down. It had been turned into a two-family because poverty was all over the nation in 1940. My house was built in 1885. I didn't come to the city and say, you know, I want to fix up this house, but it's economically unfeasible. Could you help me? I tore my shoulder in half building that house. I built that house, rebuilt that house from the floor to the basement, every inch of it. And so did these people. They invested money in their neighborhoods. High Street's a dividing line. That man right there is a saint for what he's helping us do downtown. And he listens and he tries to make it right. North, or when you get south of High Street, that's our neighborhood. Those are people. They can't get a special deal. They can't get their zoning changed so it's profitable. All they can do is plug along, whether they live on Apple Lane or Cleveland Avenue or somewhere between. Milford's different now than it was a while ago. Milford's changing. We take pride in our downtown. We take pride in our neighborhoods. Look around, walk the streets. I do every night. I see people adding things to their homes, replacing roofs, fixing gutters, changing windows, putting their money where their mouth is, not asking anybody to change anything so it can be economically feasible. I disdain this discussion. I'm insulted that someone would come and say, change the rules because I can't make a buck following the rules. That's my discussion. That's my issue. That's my stance. It's the spirit of the neighborhood. The law is the law. The spirit of the law is just a way to twist it. The spirit of the neighborhood is we have a residential area that we want to maintain a character, and I'm all for that. And I can't change my mind based on your best efforts. And I appreciate your best efforts. It's just not good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I served on the Comprehensive Plan Committee. So I was involved in the discussions that led to the document that we have. Yes, these buildings don't look exactly like all the homes in South Milford. But this piece of property and its history isn't like all the other homes in South Milford. Our laws give individuals such as this gentleman the right to come and ask. Doesn't mean we have to say yes.
That's right.
But it's definitely his right. And I am personally not offended that he's taking advantage of our laws to ask a question. It's not offensive to me. You can ask.
That's good.
All right. So we differ.
We disagree. Again.
I don't feel the density is inappropriate for the neighborhood. I also have some questions about the compatibility of design. I get that look. I've certainly seen lots of houses in really nice neighborhoods that have that look. I don't know about the compatibility between the look that you're proposing for the townhomes and what might end up being the look for the duplexes. Since they are together, I kind of hope to see more of continuity in materials. And how you achieve that, I'm not here to dictate, but that's something I'd be looking for. Stormwater is a major concern, but I've already stated my faith in the city's regulations. When the school building was built and changes that have been made on the property as a result of the school being there, I don't think those regulations were either in place or complied with. So we have a different ballgame looking at development on this property going forward.
I think it's very important. My primary hinge point on this has to do with the fact that it's a planned unit development overlay. And the reason I drive a stake in that is, and that's why I asked the question about the durability of it. I mean, that is a mechanism we use to achieve ends when the categorical rule doesn't fit perfectly. And I understand that we're asking for a change to the categorical plan. And I understand you're asking for an exception. We've seen lots of exceptions cross our desks in the last few years, some of which we fought down with battle wounds, and some of them not so much, thank goodness. But in this case, since the PUD, the development plan is attached and part and integral to this application, it gives me greater confidence that we're going to see something come out of this that frankly looks like we're heading for the right spirit of what that feel needs to be.
Any other discussion?
Flip the switch.
Our process is to make a recommendation to City Council. As Pam has stated a couple of times, our options are to recommend the request be approved as requested, the application be granted as requested. We can make a recommendation to council that it be requested but make modifications, or we can recommend the application not be granted. So is anyone prepared to make a motion?
May I ask for discussion of the conditions that I'm seeing outlined on the last page of the staff recommendations, to see if we have missed any conditions that need to be added or curtailed from this list of 4 that I see here.
Sure.
So I'm opening that up as a question to my fellow commission members.
I think all the things we talked about are on there. The materials, the stormwater.
I think they can easily be addressed. For example, my two biggest issues being 1 and 3. I think because they're already conditions, I think that's going to already get us to the point where we have that discussion in more detail next time. So I'm okay with these.
You're okay with Sam Sarsen?
With just
Those
these
2 things?
conditions, yeah.
The 4 conditions.
The 4.
4 conditions.
4 there.
I don't know if there's anything else that John, do you have any other concerns you want addressed in the?
No, my eyes were wandering around the room. That's all.
Sorry, I was just asking Mr. Brumley if he had any, because since he brought up the point, were there any other things that he wanted added?
No, I wanted to make sure that we were covering what these conditions were and that we understood them in their extent.
All right.
The question isn't to approve this project. The question is, do we change R2 to make it economically feasible for him to develop the property? That's the question.
With the planned unit development
With the plan,
overlay.
yeah. And so are we making a motion?
I asked if anyone was prepared to make a motion.
Yeah.
Yes, I did that.
I move that we not grant the application. And because it requires us change a zoning that was well thought through when it was put in place.
in the best interests of the residents on the south side of High Street, which is the neighborhood that needs our protection because there's such robust change downtown, that if we don't protect that neighborhood one by one, that will become the thoroughfare that it's trying to become. If you've ever sat on Cleveland Avenue and watched the canoes and the landscaping trucks and all the BMWs from up on the hill and polo fields, nobody's ever changed our streets, but they're using our streets. And Garfield, and Cleveland, and you want to see somebody get upset, wait till they start running the ambulances down Mound instead of Cleveland. The whole neighborhood's destroyed because it's become Coleraine Avenue or Beachmont Avenue, where the traffic is zipping through like the Autobahn. And it really is that bad. We sit on our porch and just shake our heads. These people aren't making that up. So adding to that, there is a traffic problem. It's not this guy's problem. Traffic problem is Milford's problem. We're growing our city and nobody's addressing the streets, especially through our residential neighborhoods. So my deal is, I don't think we can give him an exception till we solve some of our own infrastructures, because that's not fair to the people that have invested and lived here for many, many years and invested in their property. That's just not fair. And it's not right. I don't think the exception should be granted. So I'm picking option number dot, which is the third dot that says, I recommend the application not be granted. We're not in a position to do that.
All right, we have a motion to recommend to council that the application not be granted. Is there a second to the motion? I don't hear a second.
So I don't even get to discuss it further. That's okay.
I think you already did.
Well, you know, well, the discussion is what's the worst that happens, is that somebody has to come back with something that does meet R2, which might be best for this whole situation. It's not going to happen if you bend over backwards to accommodate somebody else's profit, to change
I don't think,
rules.
John, I don't
that
think
are
it's
well
bending
thought.
over backwards, honestly. I'll tell you why. Well, yeah, I know you do. But, okay, so these are attached single-family homes. It increases owner percentage versus renter percentage of Milford. The density is lower than R2 requirements. The height is lower than R2 requirements. It increases the walkable traffic to our local Main Street business, which is critically important to those local businesses. The water drainage issues are greatly improved, although I need to see more proof of that. But at the very least, they're improved. At the very least, they're improved. They could be entirely mitigated at some point. I don't know. I haven't seen evidence of that. The traffic is based on the information that we have. Traffic is less than when the school is in. And the argument of at rush hour is a bad argument, because you got to also say, what about, let me speak. At the same time, 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of the businesses that are downtown, which is why our home prices are so much higher now, which is why we have the entertainment that we do, because we made changes, because we did those things. This is a family-oriented community. They're not putting in apartment complexes here, and all they need is an R4 to make that happen. It's not an R4 to make apartment complexes. It's an R4 to put in the type of units that are profitable to build on that property. I don't think that property can be built on with an R2, frankly. I mean, I really don't. Not sustainably or feasibly.
I agree with you. Of course you can.
But it continues the family orientation of our neighborhood. Now, do I like the look of it? I don't think it fits in with Milford at all. I have a problem with that, but that can be mitigated later at the next step in the process. Do I think the stormwater has been fully addressed? Maybe. I don't know enough about it yet, so I have to learn more about that, but that will come at the maintenance time when the city engineers get involved. So I'm not seeing how this isn't an R2. We're just changing the designation. I mean, they've met all the R2 requirements. This is ridiculous. The arguments I've heard are really more personal arguments than they are about the data, about the solution that's been brought in front of us. So that's how I feel.
Thank you.
So is anyone else prepared to make a different motion? So is anyone else prepared to make a different motion?
In consideration of the whole package, as to how the mechanics of how this works and gets things done. This is almost, I have to agree with Dino. The outcome as a package crystallizes right. So since I keep on having people looking over their glasses at me. Okay. I'll make a motion to recommend the application be granted and requested with the staff recommendations as noted, 1 through 4. No need to reread them. They're here in the document.
Motion, do we have a second?
Motion is made with what conditions? I'm sorry, the staff recommendations?
Yeah, with the
For
staff,
recommended,
With the what? I'm sorry.
with the staff recommendations that were presented.
and just
I
to,
only got 2 on my staff
Oh,
recommendation.
you might be, no, you got the wrong document.
How can that
Yeah,
possibly
You
be?
have the one with draft on it?
Hang on a
What's
minute.
wrong?
There it is. Sorry about that.
for the,
There's 3 there. I got it. I got it, man. I tell you
to
what.
reiterate, the
Stormwater.
recommendations were provide stormwater maintenance
We're going to have to
plan.
say them.
That's it. Before approval of final plat, the private drive width will be the same width to the end of the drive. They showed it narrowing at the end of the duplex section. Provide details about the types of materials to be used and provide market data supporting the need for duplexes in the city.
Number 4 is a bullshit item, if I can say, because you can get anybody to say there's market data to support duplexes in the city. That's a matter of opinion. That's not data. That's hearsay. So I think that point's really a moot point. You
Won't
think they're
hurt
not
for
going to
them
be
to
able to
provide
come up
it.
with that support?
Won't hurt for him to provide it. It will not hurt for him to provide it.
No, it won't. I just hate passing this on to city council's hands because I think it's a smelly deal. I don't like it. So if we pass it on, we pass it on. I can
I
vote.
think,
and say
John,
no.
you're catering to the audience more than you are being a
I
planning
live-
commissioner right now. I really do.
That a
But that's fine, but that's not how you make
Catering to-
legitimate decisions in a city to help it grow and thrive and sustain itself.
Well,
You're putting so much of your personal passion into it that you're not being a planning commissioner right now.
I
Or
am.
not.
I am. Somebody has to be a dissenting voice.
Well, then sit out there. And
No, I
listen
sit
to
right
me.
here. People don't want just yes votes on this board. They want the dissenting vote.
This is a
We're
problem.
disagreeing. It's
This
not
is
a problem.
This is a serious problem.
It's not a problem. So we have a
Well,
first,
third.
you have a second, take a vote.
We are, if you'll be
All right.
quiet.
I will.
Please.
Mr. Winstrup,
No.
Mr. Powell,
Yay.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
Ms. Evans. Yes. Mr. Brumley.
Yes?
No.
This recommendation will be forwarded to city council for their meeting August 18th. I encourage all of you to attend.
It's a process, everybody. It doesn't mean it's approved. It means we're moving forward to the next step. So there's still stuff to look at.
Thank you.
Do you mind if we
Take a walk in the water. Water and restroom.
Okay, we'll take a
John, I
5-minute
apologize.
break. We do have another case to hear, so if you have conversations you'd like to have, we'd ask that you take them outside so we can continue with the meeting in 5 minutes. 5:30. We're a little longer than 5.
Yeah, sorry.
This case is River Row Plan Development Overlay. Pam.
All right, thank you. The location is 5 Water Street. Property owners Beauty Ridge. Acreage is 0.53 acres, and the tax parcel is 210-709A-006P. The zoning is the Milford River District. It's a vacant land, and the proposed use is 8 to 12 condominiums. All the adjacent property is zoned MRD, and the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to review a plan development application submitted by Hank Rowe of DER Development per section 1133, changes and amendments of the Milford zoning ordinance. Mr. Rowe is requesting to add a plan development overlay to the parcel. The applicant is proposing to construct 8 to 12 residential condominiums on the subject site. This is the same process for plan development as we just went through. The Planning Commission may recommend the application be granted as requested, may recommend a modification of the zoning change requested, may recommend the application not be granted. After receiving the Planning Commission recommendation, the City Council will hold a public hearing. The council public hearing is scheduled for August 18th at 7 p.m. in City Council chambers. Following the public hearing and after reviewing the recommendation of the Planning Commission, council shall vote on the proposed application. Council may overrule the Planning Commission recommendation by a 2/3 vote of the full membership of council. If the council approves the plan development request, the applicant will be required to submit a final development plan to Planning Commission for review and approval. The final development plan will include such items as final grading plans, site plans, elevation, floor plans, and a detailed landscaping plan. The applicant has 1 year to begin construction once a final development plan is approved. Otherwise, the plan becomes void. On August 14th, 2019, Planning Commission approved the River Row site plan request to construct a 17,365 square foot, 3-story mixed-use building with a lower level parking area. The first floor use was retail restaurant, and the second and third floor was office. Changes to the original design include an increase of 1,000 square feet to the parking level footprint to allow for additional parking stalls. The new total parking count will be 21 stalls. The building exterior adjustments include full height brick veneer, operable windows, and a common outdoor patio terrace. The entrance is now fully enclosed with a common area for the building occupants. The zoning ordinance defines multifamily dwellings as a dwelling designed for or occupied by 3 or more families with separate housekeeping and cooking facilities for each. The site is zoned MRD. The residential condominiums is a conditional use in the MRD and require approval by the Planning Commission. Multifamily dwellings exceeding 6 units per acre are permitted in the MRD with an approved plan development overlay. The project area is 0.52 acres. The density is determined by dividing the project area by the required lot area. There is no minimum lot area requirement in this district. The proposed density at 12 condominium units yields 23 units per acre, and 8 condominium units result in a density of 15.38 units per acre. Staff agrees with the analysis provided by the applicant and believe this development is consistent with the goals and objectives of Milford's land use plan. The applicant provides a unified treatment of the site. All the city departments have reviewed the plan. The city can provide water, sewer, and safety services to the property. The private driveway is via Water Street and provides vehicle access to the site. The applicant appears to meet the minimum building height of 45 feet as specified in the MRD district. From Water Street, the building height is 41 feet from the ground to the parapet. The parapet adds an additional 6 feet to the building height, but is not included when calculated the maximum allowable height. There are no specific setback requirements in the MRD. Common open space should comprise up to 20% of the project area. The applicant has preserved approximately 10% of the site as common open space. Given the relationship of this development to Terrell Park, Memorial Park, and the Little Miami Scenic River Bike Trail, staff does not feel additional open space is necessary. The screening will consist of landscaping in the common areas. Detailed landscaping plans will be included with the final development plan submittal. Traffic study was conducted in 2017. The staff does not see a need to perform additional traffic studies for this site. Staff recommends approval with the condition that city approval contingent on review and approval by city engineer and any other state and federal agencies, and screening the dumpster pad with material to match the building. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Any questions at this time for staff?
On the traffic study impact in 2017, is there any way you could give me just a quick summary of what the result of that was for that little area? Did it show that we could?
We actually have
for-
made some, yes, that traffic study was a participatory traffic study. The Rose and Riverwalk all contributed a third, and the city. So we all spent a portion to do this traffic study. And we looked at that intersection, Mill and US 50 Water Street, that whole area. We have since done some improvements to the site, to the signal and whatnot. So that's what the traffic study showed, was improvements to the signal.
Okay.
Going forward, will we need to do more? Maybe. But we've already done some improvements based on that traffic study.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
If there aren't any other questions for staff at this time, we'll hear from the applicant, please.
You can actually use that. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I don't think I've been up on the agenda this late in the evening before. Normally we're first, but I got to see somebody else in my shoes, which was nice. Pam nutshelled it very well, like she normally does. There are some minor building design changes, as Pam mentioned, but primarily this is a use change. As we went through the winter and we're, out there canvassing office type users, we weren't getting very many hits. We needed to get a certain price point. It wasn't there. Milford's not generally known as a hot area for office. So we started to kind of go back to the drawing board, and we're looking at, well, there aren't very many at all really condos in downtown Milford. Such a great spot. I think this is more benign use. Dino was asking about the traffic. We went through this approval before 100% commercial with the whole traffic element in there. Now this is only going to garner less, invasive traffic patterns given the condos in lieu of full commercial space. We do want to maintain, if we can, zoning privileges to keep the first floor open for potentially commercial or residential. We have some residential units shown there. They are small. There's a lot more common area on the first floor than the second and third. We don't know how well that will go with the market, so we want to be able to keep that option open should we find a good use for the first floor. It could be restaurant. I doubt it. It probably would be more a retail than anything. Maybe it's office, maybe it's a real estate place, maybe it's a little coffee shop that closes at noon. What we don't want is a bar or a nightclub or something that's going to be open until 1 or 2 in the morning, and disrupting, the condos on the floors above. Let's see. We actually have had a couple. We really haven't marketed this yet, but we've talked to a couple groups, 3 groups that may be interested in not 1 condo, but 2 condos because of the size. They're downsizing from significantly larger spaces where they would take 2 units and combine them into 1 unit. And who knows if they'll work out, but if they do, then that's, I guess, half the units already gone. So I think it's a good fit. It's got great natural amenities around it. It kind of, complements everything else that's going on down there with all this big rush on commercial and retail, restaurant, everything surrounding the site. So we think it's a good plan.
Take any questions for the applicant at this time?
The parking, I thought I saw somewhere there's going to be like garage, like carport kind of things underneath, or?
It's, well, initially the entire footprint of the building was similar as, you know, the lower level all the way up to the roof. When we were at that stage before, we had about 8, 9 stalls down on the lower level. We figured if we're going to be putting up to 12 units here, we need to fit as many dedicated parking stalls per unit as we can. And we can't fit 12. We can fit 11. Maybe somebody buys a unit, 2 units into one. Maybe we go first floor commercial, but we think we can fit confidently 11 parking stalls on the first floor. Therefore, we had to expand the footprint a little bit. It's about 1,000-foot sliver. I want to say it's 12, 13 feet wide by 80, 90 feet long. It's on the backside facing the river, where that larger footprint only ascends up to the first floor elevation. At that point, that roof becomes a patio terrace of some sort. Maybe those first floor residential condos can have outdoor space there. Maybe it's, I don't know, outdoor coffee shop space or something. And then as a result, we lost surface parking outside. That count was before, I want to say maybe, I don't know, 18. Now it's 8 or 9 plus the 11 inside. So we're down to net, you know, maybe 5 or 6 stalls, but I don't think we need all those that we had before because the use is not going to require them. But it's not a carport. We have openness down there because we are in the floodplain.
Right.
By 4 feet. So that lower area is in the floodplain. And because of that, we have to have an openness factor with the water. If it does flood, it has to come in and flow in and then flow out of the lower level. So those are open panels that are secured by ornamental fencing, just to keep anybody, you know, coming up from the river or whatnot out of there. So
That would, the flooding would not undermine the structure in any way.
No.
It would just take a few parking spaces maybe, and then when it's receded, you'll squirt off the mud.
yeah, and in elevation 518 is the current 100-year flood elevation. For a year or two now, 514 is the flood elevation, 518 is our finished floor of the parking area. FEMA's been talking about, per Nate Clayton, the former Public Works Director, they were talking to him about reducing the floodplain elevation by 4 feet, making it equivalent to our grade down there. So if that happens, then it's just, you know, and when is the last time anybody saw the
Who's
river?
going to own this building?
When you sell condos, you have to have a declarant entity. So what we would do is transfer it to an entity that we're in control of because we are the developer of the condominium association or the development, at which point towards the end of selling all those units, that entity dissolves and the condo association essentially takes over.
Right. And if it floods, that's the owner's problem.
Yes.
Not the city's problem.
Right.
So the driveway comes like back behind the building here, right?
Yeah, there should be a site plan in there.
Yeah, is that? I mean, certainly if someone has a problem turning left at that, coming across the bridge, turning left, they can go up Mill, down May, turn down Concrete, come down, they can drive around the block and get to the.
Yeah, I don't think it's prohibited. Technically, it might be
units?
Up to 12.
So, I mean, with 12 units, even if everybody had 2 cars, it's not a tremendous amount, and they're not on the street.
Right.
12 of them are in the parking garage.
Correct.
There's only 12 spaces in the garage.
There's 11.
11.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then there are 8 stalls outside in the surface parking area. Yeah.
Okay. So 8,
Then we have
11, and 8, 19.
Yeah, and then we have a couple reserved for the library building as well.
Well, that'll be clearly delineated that these are
Signage.
for the residents of the row building.
Right.
Right. Okay. Row. Yeah. River Row.
River Row.
Today, you've made a few changes. What do these things go for? What do you think they'll rent for or sell for?
Well, we haven't finished our design because it's naturally we need to get through, planning and zoning, and then we finish our construction drawings, at which point we can, complete our budget. But we think we can get between $400,000 and $500,000 per unit.
So that's
Nice.
that's a good price point
Mhm.
compared to 700 and something for the side of a hill. But who am I to say? Good. So you've made some changes, and you just want to make sure those changes are okay. What are you asking us to do today?
Changes include, prior to, the main entrance was at the radial corner there, at the kind of the
kind of
tip of
open.
the drive. Yeah, it was open. Now that's enclosed because we don't need a grand formal entrance any longer, since it most likely will not be commercial, the whole building.
Or a restaurant or something.
Yeah, so we brought that, that was a, kind of recessed soffit area, if you will, where the main entry doors were prior. So we brought that second floor wall all the way down. Now that's enclosed space. It was the lobby where the elevator cab was, et cetera. Now that's a kind of a common room. It could be a fitness area, it could be a lounge, something like that.
I see this.
Hank, are you talking about?
Yes, exactly.
That was open before.
Exactly.
Remember that?
That was open. Yeah. We moved the main entry slightly to the west, maybe about halfway down the length of that elevation of the building. We continuing that direction west on the first floor, we have a common outdoor terrace area that everybody can get to. Most of these units, 2/3 of them, have their own outdoor space. Some of the, I guess what would that be? The southeast units don't have any outdoor patio spaces. So that gives them an opportunity to have an outdoor space.
Go out there.
Common with everybody else. Have a grill out there, whatever. And then we also changed the building veneer, which was a mix of stone and brick to all brick. What else did we do?
What was the reason for that, Hank?
Cost, to be honest with you. Plus, a lot of the masonry buildings in Old Milford are predominantly one material type, and that's brick, and that's full height brick. So I think it fits in better.
It does fit. It looks nice.
The top is that a facade? The white, is that like a rail or?
No, that's a cornice. There's a parapet.
Parapet, right.
And just to have different material up there.
Is there any rooftop thing
No.
going on there?
I mean, there's mechanical equipment, but there's not public space up there.
That access for the, okay.
No.
So there's condensers and stuff like that up there.
Right.
Air cool, okay.
Yeah.
But they're screened. Why is there a break in the middle of it? Why is that open?
I don't know. We've been thinking about that same question. Our architect felt that he wanted to break
Slide
up,
or something later on?
just break up the line, the mass, but
it does beg the question.
yeah, it might look better without it. Just an architectural feature, and there's nothing else to it than that.
The green that I see here is a natural lawn. Is that correct?
It'd be landscaped. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a mixture of lawn and plantings.
Trees and shrubs and.
I have some questions. I know this doesn't really go to whether or not we're talking about granting the change.
Yeah.
But I do have a question about the central corridor on the first floor. Is that requisite for the residential use? I don't recall the central corridor being there under commercial use. Was that the case or not? I can't recall.
It depended on whether or not we had a single tenant per floor prior, or if we had multiple tenants, then we're going to have that circulation space.
Right.
So it was, I don't know if it was delineated on our prior application or not, but it was just a shell essentially because we didn't have any tenants in mind. So
I was just curious about it because it made me wonder about the usability of the southern tenant space there on the first floor. I can't imagine being a resident there in that southern first floor space. I was just kind of curious about it. I know that's just kind of the way things shake out sometimes, but I was wondering about that. And also, this falls under the category of Christmas wish list. So just bear with me. You had a lovely fountain that you had brought over from Bavaria, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's still
I like the.
I see
Really?
it. I see it. But
Yeah.
but now it has a fence around it.
Well, because we don't want it to be public.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, this falls under the Christmas wish list category. Okay, so I was just wondering if it could be shared.
What I offered when we were.
Dale,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you
Hey,
up
sir.
here.
Right, who are you? Who is this mysterious man?
Mr. Saint, right?
When we were initially developing the brewery, and I had Ron Roberts, who's the engineer, see if we could put a meridian strip between Chesley's building and the Millcroft, and we were going to build a strip there, and then I was going to have a memorial there, and we were going to use Philip Gatch, the original founder of Milford, as a statue right there in the middle.
Wow.
But there wasn't enough width
Mhm.
on Mill Street to do it.
But I was just wondering if
Enough room there.
I was just wondering if the fence could go around the other side of the fountain, so it could be.
Yeah, just
Well, you know, I had, you know, with Christmas list, I'd like to see a big old Christmas tree as you come across that bridge every year, but,
We had that.
yeah. Well,
Years ago.
the fountain, in his defense, and he has a fence around it, is an attractive nuisance. I mean, people get in it, splash around. You got 350 people across the bridge drinking beer going, let's go jump.
Yeah, right.
And so I think they can enjoy it from afar and see
Good
it.
point.
So
It's fair
I
enough.
think that's probably
It's fair enough.
wise,
It's a fair point.
The burning clock across the street.
Yeah.
which is lovely.
You could just
Yeah,
build the
yeah.
fountain up so you can see it over the
Well,
fence.
I mean, actually, because you're 10% open space, is that part of your 10%? So that should be open space, common open space. In other words, it should be open to the public.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Not common to the building.
Oh,
Well, I'll
that's
have
a
to,
good technicality
Wow,
there.
Pam.
That's interesting.
Pull that card out. Pull that card out of nowhere.
I'll check on that.
We'll do whatever it takes.
Sorry. Laughter at your expense. I apologize, please.
But I wanted to put a meridian strip there on.
Oh,
Mill,
yeah.
And we didn't have the width.
Yeah.
To do it.
Right. Where the
Redo the one that's there.
triangular crosswalk
You can
island
redo the
is.
one
yeah.
that's there.
So Dale, are you saying, is this a fountain you already have?
I own it.
How big is it?
About 12 foot. I had it at my home and I sold my home and the people who purchased it did not like it. So they said, will you take that? And I said, well, sure.
Wow.
So I brought a crane up and I dismantled it and I have it stored at my at Gatch Farm.
It doesn't have a likeness of you on a horse or anything. does it?
No, it's, if I recall correctly, some sort of quasi-angelic figure of some sort.
That would be
Yeah.
It's a lady, it's a bronze statue. She's got water. I don't know if she's carrying pineapples or something.
There was water coming through her hand and then each tier has water flowing and it's bronze.
It was a cool thing, as I recall.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
I think it'd be quite attractive.
Oh, yeah.
And
all for it.
in
See,
developing,
there you go. 10 minutes of talk about fountains.
Yeah.
See what I did?
in
Giveth and you taketh.
the question, more to your application, the question that you ask about reserving the right to have residential on the first floor and maybe have to change it if somebody wants to put in a restaurant or whatever, I think that's very acceptable because we know the brewery took a chance on opening a brewery in our community. And they said, well, maybe we can put a tent and see it. And the tent proved that, yeah, we can handle more capacity. And so, whereas if they'd have built a building early on and it had failed, we'd have a white elephant sitting on the side of the river. So
we would.
You would, right? So keeping your options open while still within the spirit of the downtown corridor, I think is totally acceptable. And I just wanted to comment on that aspect of the request.
Well, and lots of the older, mixed-use buildings in downtown Milford have first floor commercial and, upper level residential. So,
That seems like
Anything ever happens to
that
Grace,
seems
I'm
the most likely model.
Yeah, right.
Your open space is okay. You are okay. Yeah, it doesn't have to
Okay.
be
thanks.
dedicated or anything
Yeah,
like
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
I get so many calls weekly for apartments. It's unbelievable.
Interesting.
Wow,
It's amazing. I've never had that.
wow.
People are inviting you to parties now?
No.
Are we, have we merged over to discussion and
We
now
haven't
we're,
heard from the rest of the audience yet.
oh, that's true.
Yes.
Is there any other questions for the applicant from Planning Commission? Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anyone who would like to speak, ask questions? Please step forward. State your name and address for the record.
Brenda Jacoby, 707 State Route 28. I've not seen any plan, and my question is, what are people going to see as they cross the bridge? Is it going to block the view? How far out to the street, Water Street, is it?
Is it going to block what? I'm sorry.
Well, as you come across the bridge, it's a really nice open view of downtown, and I don't know where it's going to
I'll answer from
sit.
my opinion only.
Okay.
And I know that the applicant
I mean, I've
should
not seen
probably-
it, so I don't know. I'm just asking how far out does it
Yeah,
sit?
it actually, if you've seen where the fence is across from the
Uh-huh.
brewery,
Yes.
it's actually even behind that.
John, could you say again?
It sits back a pretty
Far enough
respectful
that it's
distance
more of an
from
open feel. Okay.
Mill
All right.
Street, Main Street, excuse me, Main Street.
Main Street, okay. Gotcha.
I just
Yeah.
didn't want to have any idea what it even looked like.
Well, that green area is on
You
the
didn't
street
bring
side,
the
so yeah, that
screen.
pushes it back. I think it focuses your eye. I think one of the things it'll do, because it does sit, it's not lined along with the bridge but there's that green. I think what it'll do is you do, is it Stuhlreiner? You do him a big favor because it'll put a focus right on the Millcroft. It'll just channel your eye right to that beautiful.
Cool.
Get our exclusive river views back when our building goes up from what he has.
Oh, my
Right.
gosh.
Okay.
Said-
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
Thank you.
hadn't had a
Thank
clue what
you.
it looked like.
Okay.
Well. Maybe.
No comment.
I like it better than Restorex.
Then the what?
Restorex, the
Oh, yes.
thing that was there forever. And
God, no kidding.
Is there anyone
Kidding.
else in the audience that wanted to ask a question or make a comment about the project?
Yeah, it was terrible.
No?
oh, it's horrible.
Two people watching
Terrible.
Zoom, so
Okay.
if you want to.
Building-
Sure, we'll open up the floor.
Building
Gentlemen, excuse me, we're trying to run a meeting here.
Hand.
Make up
We're
for
causing a lot of trouble tonight.
Seriously, let's split these two up. Is there anyone watching online that would like to comment or ask a question about the project?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand. Okay, thank you. All right. We don't have any other questions for the applicant to address based on public comment, so is there discussion by Planning Commission? So just to reiterate, we approved the building about a year ago. And they're looking to change the use, and to do that in the Milford River District, we need to they need to request a planned development overlay for the multifamily density they're asking for. So, thoughts, discussion, comments?
Designated hitter.
Good one.
I feel good about it. I'm glad that they're sharing with us what they're finding as far as the marketability of the building, and that maybe the original plan, especially with the development of the event center and other places that open up. So they're being flexible, trying to make sure that the building's highly viable, and they're sharing that with us, which I appreciate. Their submission is detailed and annotated, and they're not asking for any special favors. They just change.
Yes, they are.
Well, they're asking for
Make
some,
money.
not special favors. They're not asking us to change zoning. That's a special favor. They're asking us to revise their request to not put, they're not putting a restaurant, they're changing that front. And those changes all seem acceptable to me, Ms. McKnight.
They're asking for a planned development overlay.
Make money.
Yes. And what do you think about that?
I think their proposed use is fine.
Okay.
I do too. I'm
What I
okay with,
said.
I'm totally okay with this as is. I don't see any issues.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
No, no, no. It's fine.
you. Hank, yeah, sure.
And you had a condition about the dumpster screen matching the materials of the building. Maybe I did not identify that, but we have always planned on having that in masonry, brick veneer, concrete block backup structure.
Mhm.
So,
And that would be a detail that would be
Sure,
caught at final
yeah.
development plan
Yeah,
anyway. So,
yeah, okay.
yeah. I don't
All right.
really know why I added it. I guess I felt like I needed to give you a couple of conditions.
I just wanted to make sure there was there's already an understanding there, but
Yeah.
These are salutary conditions.
Yeah.
Discussion, or anyone ready to make a motion?
I will make a motion just because I got to do one tonight. I'll do another just so I can even out my karma here. Let's see. I would like to move that we recommend the application be granted as requested with the staff recommendations of the city approval will continue to review approval, city engineer, applicable federal, state, and federal agencies, and they screen the dumpster pan with the material to match the building.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend approval of the application with the two conditions as recommended by staff. Pam, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Wenstrup,
Yes.
Mr. Pell,
Yay.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes.
Ms. Evans,
Yes.
Mr. Brumley.
Yes.
Very good. All right, so this will be, this recommendation will be forwarded to council and considered at their meeting on August 18th.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other business to
Thank
come
you, guys.
before Planning Commission this evening, Pam?
Yes.
No,
Yes?
Yes, I would like to formally apologize to John, Planning Commission, for my outburst earlier. Just want it noted on the record. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And he did so privately as well. And not being as magnanimous as you, I appreciate the opportunity to share my fervor for protecting our neighborhoods as our downtown grow. I will not stop doing that. You can get rid of me. You could. So, just so you know. All right.
Any other
That's all I
business?
needed to do.
No, that's it.
All right. I'll make a motion. We adjourn at 9:15.
Second.
Thank you.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.
Thank you.
That was a